affordable aluminum has always been an important partner in the manufacturing sector for the United States. In fact, some of our aluminum smelters were created in the Second World War in order to supply the U.S. military with the aluminum that it needed for your military manufacturing. And so we are recognized and have always been as not only a vital partner on the commercial stage, but as a vital partner in the North American and in the U.S. defense platform. So our perspective on this is that we are always going to be a very important, reliable, dependable partner that is integrated with the U.S. manufacturing sector and defense sector. And we should be focusing on that and not putting on tariffs that will just jack up the prices for the users of that product, who will continue to need our aluminum as we all work very hard to come out of the economic downturn that we're facing now.
Ambassador Hillman, another point of contention over the years between the United States and Canada in trade has been dairy. And we have the minority leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer from New York, now writing a letter saying, really, this is not working between the United States and Canada. What does the USMCA do, if anything, to relieve some of that pressure? Because I know this is really politically important to Canada.
Sure. It is. It's very politically important to Canada. Our dairy sector is a sector that we have always been very committed to ensuring that our producers are able to produce their product in a way that is sustainable for the sector and for the industry and for the culture of our dairy farmers. In the USMCA, we have granted additional access to the U.S. Producers to the Canadian dairy market, and that additional access will come into force on Wednesday when the agreement comes into force. So we're on the verge of additional access for many dairy producers coming from the United States, and I think that should be a welcome news for everyone, including the senator.
Madam Ambassador, take a step back for a moment and talk more broadly about relations between the United States and Canada in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. What has happened, basically, on people going back and forth across the border, trading in goods and services and things like that across the border? Where do you stand right now in dealing with the United States, where we do have a pandemic problem? No question about it.
Yeah. Well, look, the really good news is that back in March, Canada and the United States were able to come together very cooperatively and decide that we wanted to restrict traffic back and forth across our borders, because we were both working to manage the pandemic within our own countries. And in order to get a handle on that and see what was happening and make sure that our systems were able to support our citizens while we sought to reduce the curve, we decided cooperatively and very efficiently to continue to allow commercial travel, continue to allow transport and trade, and keep our supply chains operating. But we asked our citizens, each of us respectively, to not be traveling for non-essential and recreational purposes at this time. And the really good news is that these measures are working. They're really working. So we have, as our economies are starting to come back online, we have supply chains that are ramping up, including, in sectors where those supply chains depend very heavily on the ability of Canadians and Americans to cross back and forth across the border to feed those supply chains. So we've seen quite a significant reduction in non-essential travel, but we've seen a very small reduction in commercial travel, mostly attributed to, in fact, the economic slowdown. And as the as our economic recovery continues, what we're seeing is that the commercial travel is coming right back up to historical levels. So to my mind, it's a huge success story of our cooperation between our two countries. Maybe just one other thing to mention on the border. So the actual management of the border has happened incredibly cooperatively, but we also have Canadians and Americans who are essential workers traveling back and forth, non-commercial workers. So, for example, we have thousands of Canadians who work in the healthcare field as nurses and doctors who travel to the U.S. every day to care for American patients and then come back to Canada at night. And these are people who live in border communities who have had those professions for a very long time. And we've been able to sustain that through the pandemic because it's important and because taking care of each other at this time is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about it. And we are so closely related between the United States and Canada. Thank you so much, Madam Ambassador. Good to have you here. That is the Canadian Ambassador to the United States, Kirsten Hillman. Coming up here, Stock of the Hour is going to be Facebook, who has its own set of problems with advertisers pulling out. That's coming up next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seizechange.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
You may not be getting on planes yet.
At what point do we start to see this elusive V-shaped recovery?
But for detailed, up-to-the-minute news of Asia, you don't have to.
Do you think that the tension has the possibility to destabilize Asian assets?
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
Do you expect some of these companies that come and list here to then delist in New York?
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. Facebook is our stock of the hour. It is coming back from some worse losses today. This is on the heel of an 8% loss back Friday. And that is, of course, because several major advertisers now are pulling out of Facebook. Here to report on it is Kaylee Lyons. Kaylee, they're having some struggles there.
They are. Interestingly, the shares are now positive on the day, though that's probably just in tandem with the gains we're seeing in the broader market because the list of advertisers pulling out of Facebook is getting longer and longer. It started with Unilever on Friday. It now includes the likes of Coca-Cola, Starbucks, Hershey's, even PepsiCo. These are all companies that spend some $20 billion annually on advertising that are no longer doing so on Facebook and other social media platforms as part of an effort to get the company to further crack down on hate speech and posts with disinformation. Now, Mark Zuckerberg, in response to this on Friday, made some moves on labeling voting-related posts, expanding his prohibition on hate speech and advertising, but apparently it's doing nothing to stem the tide. Now, you have to keep in mind, David, that this is already going to be a difficult year for Facebook from the top-line standpoint, given that advertisers are pulling back because of the pandemic. Analysts only expect sales growth of about 1% this quarter, which would be the slowest since the company went public by far. And these pullbacks add some risk to that view. Diageo, for example, one of the top advertisers, spent more than $100 million on the Facebook platform last year, and it is not going to do so for the time being, David.
Yeah, Kaylee, as you suggest, it's a little hard to figure out how much is just advertisers pulling back, period. And by the way, maybe making a point of this to really make a point on civil rights in doing it, and how much it really is specific to something Facebook's doing.
Right. That's a very good point. I will say that this does seem to be a more targeted boycott, and there is some concern on the part of civil rights groups, for example, that are not concerned, but they suspect that other companies will be kind of peer pressured into doing this as there are these growing calls for social justice issues. It's just a question of how much of an impact it's really going to have, because even if half of the top 100 advertisers on Facebook pull out, that's only an impact of about $500 million. They're expected to make more than $18 billion this quarter, David.
Thank you so much to Katie Alliance. In the meantime, coming up here, we're going to talk with Dr. Mark Boom of Houston Methodist after that report about pressures on Houston hospitals on Friday. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stocks are up after better than estimated economic data offset concern over an increase in coronavirus cases. The Dow is up 383 points, or 1.5%. NASDAQ up 77. S&P up 29 points. The National Association of Realtors says contract signings to purchase previously owned homes rose 44% in May, the most on record. But shares of Planet Fitness are down on reports that hundreds of people who went to a gym in West Virginia may have been exposed to coronavirus. Remdesivir is going to cost a substantial amount of money. The drug's been approved by the FDA for use in treating some coronavirus cases. Its maker, Gilead Sciences, says the cost of a 5-day treatment will cost as much as $2,350. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative. And that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
Market upheavals.
The narrative is driven by uncertainty about the virus.
Political reversals.
It's not clear that some of the Republicans up on the Hill are agreed with the Republican White House.
Economic shifts.
The macro clearly being driven by the coronavirus outbreak.
Everything seems to be in motion.
Will it also mean a global recession in your view now?
But here, you're on solid ground.
Looking forward to guiding you through all of this.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. It's time now for First Word News, and for that we go to Mark Crumpton.
David, thank you. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has a lot of questions for intelligence officials about a report that Russia paid bounties for Americans and allied troops to be killed in Afghanistan. Speaker Pelosi calls the report disturbing and wants to know whether President Trump was given the information. And she also wants to know why Congress wasn't told of the intelligence. The president says U.S. intelligence agencies didn't believe the information was credible, and so they didn't brief him on it. The U.S. Supreme Court turned away a legal attack on President Trump's border wall today. Justices rejected an appeal that questioned a law that let the administration waive more than 40 federal statutes to start construction. The appeal was made by 4 environmental and wildlife protection organizations who said that was a violation of the Constitution. The British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is acknowledging that the coronavirus pandemic has been a, quote, disaster for Britain. The Prime Minister also announced a spending splurge designed to get the country back on track. Johnson has lined up big money pledges on schools, housing, and infrastructure in an attempt to move on from an outbreak that has left more than 43,000 Britons dead, the worst confirmed death toll in Europe. In Greece, the government is easing more lockdown measures. The government says movie theaters, casinos, and summer camps can reopen. It's also allowing concerts, conferences, and fairs to be held. Greece imposed a lockdown early on in the country's coronavirus outbreak, a move that has been credited with keeping the number of deaths and critically ill patients low. Greece has had about 3,300 cases and fewer than 200 deaths. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thank you so much, Mark. Well, Harris County, Texas, that's the home of Houston, announced on Friday that it was going to go to the highest level of alert as COVID-19 cases continued to rise and ICU beds came into short supply. Welcome now Dr. Mark Boom. He's president and CEO of Houston Methodist. It's a hospital system with more than 2,300 beds and 24,000 employees. So, Dr. Boom, thank you so much for being with us. Give us an update on where things are, because we heard reports on Friday maybe you were out of ICU beds, you were full up, but now I hear maybe that's not right.
Yeah, that's right. Let me start by saying in Houston, the virus is really spreading very rapidly, and we're highly concerned with that. So I want everything I say coming next to be clear with that unless we do something as the citizens of Houston, our leadership and others, to stem this spread, we are very concerned about the trends we are seeing. ICU beds are really one of the core things that we measure when we look at how are we able to respond to this. And last week, there were reports that we were out of ICU beds, but they really came a little more from some, I think, misunderstanding of complex data that hospital executives, physicians, and others struggle with ourselves sometimes. Normally, we run about 90-95% occupancy, and we've been running about 90-95% occupancy in our ICUs. But the difference now is, of course, about 1 in 4 of those patients have COVID versus, a year ago where none of them would have had COVID. So we've already been making many adjustments to handle that. We have a lot of ability to upregulate and have additional ICU beds, but of course that's not an unlimited supply. And so we are working very hard with that, working very hard to manage that. But unless we bend this curve and unless we have people across Houston, really every single one of them locking arms and saying, I got you and we got you covered, and wearing their mask and social distancing and all the other things they need to do, frankly, staying home at this point, unless you need to be out of the home, we're worried that we're seeing very rapid acceleration of the spread right now based on the testing data that we see.
Give us a sense of the demographics, as it were, of the sorts of patients you're seeing coming in, and particularly in ICU, having COVID-19. Is it similar to what we saw in New York? That is to say, it tends to be the elderly and people with underlying conditions, or is it changing? On Friday, once again, Vice President Pence suggested it's younger people now.
Yeah, that's correct. It is changing, and that's that certainly is a cushion a little bit to some of the dynamics, but it's not going to solve them. So in that first wave, we would see about 60% of people getting admitted or getting tested positive, rather, were over 50. Now we're seeing that completely flip, so it's 60% under 50. Back in that first wave, maybe 1 in 5 of our patients who were in ICU were younger than 50. Now that's rapidly approaching 1 in 3. So we're seeing a lot of very young people who do need ICU care. There's this misperception that, young people don't get sick. The average young person doesn't get sick, but if you have enough young people who are getting the virus, some of them get extraordinarily sick. We've had patients on ECMO. We've had a young mother who was on ECMO for over 2 weeks to save her life. We did, thankfully, able to go home to her baby after more than a month after she delivered. These are tough situations. And so we have to have everybody, and right now, frankly, with the data we're seeing, especially the younger population, recognizing that there is no way to get this under control unless everybody does their part.
Is the treatment also evolving? We don't have a vaccine yet. We don't know when we'll get one. There's a lot of talk about treatments. For example, remdesivir. We heard from Gilead today. It's going to be pretty expensive to administer this stuff. How are you treating these people who really have severe cases?
Yeah, that's a great question. And also, I think a cause for some cautious optimism, at least once somebody gets hospitalized, is that the outcomes have really improved a great deal. So mortality has gone down significantly, and it doesn't completely compute just with the age shift. That's a major factor. But we have learned so much. We've been caring for patients with COVID for over 100 days now. Our clinicians are smart. They've learned a lot. We were the first hospital in the country to use convalescent convalescent serum, and we've been very active in the remdesivir trials. And in both cases, we think those have been quite helpful. But there's a lot of other things that are more nuts and bolts, honestly. Proning, which means putting somebody on their stomach. It was a technique that had been used in the past for really sick people on a ventilator in an ICU. Now it's recognized really for patients who are in an acute care bed, so they're not so sick to be in ICU, and it's actually preventing people from deteriorating. So what we're seeing is, even though our volumes compared to the last peak are well more than double, our ICU utilization is up from that time, but not nearly as much. And I think we're keeping people out of ICU. The length of stay we're seeing is about a day and a half shorter for people who do stay here. So those are some good news. But the challenge is that in the community, this virus is spreading rapidly. And unless our community works together to get that spread under control, we are very concerned that many thousands of people could get infected, people will die, and the economy really will take a real beating again, as either through, incremental government orders, or frankly, just simply because the virus is, effectively disrupting organizations and companies and businesses' ability to function, that we will see significant negative economic impact in addition.
Dr. Boom, if you had your druthers, what would you want out of the government? And I'm talking about the state government with Governor Abbott, who was relatively eager to get things open back up, had to dial back on taverns, I think you call them. What would you like to see out of the governor? What would you like to see out of the mayor, out of the Harris County government to try to really curtail this?
So we were really grateful on Friday. The governor shut down all bars across the state. I think that's been a really troublesome area. I mean, clearly we've seen young people, but I don't want to blame this all on young people. That's not really my point, but that's not a safe setting. I think there are some additional settings we really need to question right now. One of the things I'm very concerned about is the size of gatherings that are still allowed. I'm really concerned about the 4th of July. So when we look back at the data, really the thing that to me accelerated things so much in our community was Memorial Day. We saw people just sort of throwing caution to the wind, saying, hey, summer's here, we're going to relax, we're going to do whatever we want. We saw them cramming into swimming pools, cramming across a beach, having all sorts of barbecues. Nobody was protecting themselves. And that kind of, looseness has kind of continued. I think it's starting to shift back, thankfully, now, but it's not moved back enough. And I'm really worried that we're a few days away from the 4th of July. And, if Memorial Day was throwing a bunch of wood on the fire and in the early kindling, and that we've kind of been stoking for a while, we have the risk that a 4th of July could be like, pouring a can of gasoline. And so we really need to figure out how, we message that, our patriotic duty to each other is to keep each other safe, and we need to stay home. I mean, we need to celebrate the 4th of July with the people we live with in our household. Have a backyard barbecue with your own family or your household members and not with others, and watch fireworks from a car. Don't get out of your car. Stay home, watch something on TV, but don't celebrate with large gatherings. We really need to keep people away from interacting with each other in that way, because I'm very concerned that'll accelerate the spread even more.
And we certainly need the community to participate, to comply with that. But why doesn't the government just order everybody to stay home? I mean, here I am in New York. They ordered us. Governor Cuomo ordered us to do it. It wasn't very popular. But he said for a period of time, you just got to stay home and stay with your family. Why don't they do that in Houston? Why don't they do that in Texas?
Well, it's kind of above my pay grade, one of those things. I mean, we obviously have been in a regular conversation with all government leaders about what the situation on the ground, where we are. I mean, the good news is the hospitals are managing this so far. The bad news is the virus is spreading very rapidly in our community. And of course, we cannot indefinitely continue to ramp up hospital beds. I think we have some runway on that, but we've got to get everyone doing the right thing across our community. And we need very consistent messaging from all levels of government, all of the press. One of the unfortunate things we've ended up with is that, masks have become such a political issue. The reality is masks were one of the best techniques to allow us to open up the economy. And unfortunately, this dialogue started that said they weren't the right thing. They are most emphatically the right thing to do right now. And we need everybody wearing a mask when they do go out. But frankly, we're getting to a point where if you're not going for a valid, good reason to an important business around town, particularly if you're vulnerable, you need to stay home. and you need to stay home with your family. We have to stop all the connections that are happening in the community to get some better control of this. And then, we'll be in good shape, and we can do all the things we're trying to do, which is protect first and foremost each other, but also protect our economy. And this doesn't have to be a dichotomy. There can be an and if we all do our part. But the and of having an economy that can still function and, of course, protecting people only works if you have across Houston the 7 million people, each and every one of them, doing this for each other.
Thank you so much. It sounds like very sound advice. That's Dr. Mark Boom. He is the president and CEO of Houston Medical. Coming up here on Balance of Power, we're going to talk with a former senior State Department official responsible for international energy affairs, Amos Hochstein. He's going to talk about the difficult transition away from fossil fuels. That's coming up on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Reopenings.
Is there a likelihood?
Whether you're dreaming of a house the size of a football stadium or a football stadium in the back garden of your house, what you need is dream come true money. Luckily, Friday's Euro Million Super Jackpot is a massive £110 million. Now that's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
If you have to drive, then it's more important than ever to watch your speed. As London starts to reopen, there are going to be more people on our streets. There'll be more people cycling, more people walking to work or to the shops. If you must drive, avoid the morning and evening peaks when the roads will be busier. We want the streets to be safe for everyone, all the time. So watch your speed. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Newlywed to newborn. Ordering out to tucking in. Dream car to driveway. Isn't it nice when things arrive quicker than expected? Enter your location into our digital new car locator, and it instantly tells you if the BMW you want is available nearby. So it'll be with you quicker than you might think. Search BMW New Car Locator today.
Hi, this is Mike Tirico, introducing you to Sports Uncovered, the newest podcast series from the storytellers at NBC Sports that will shine a fresh light on the most unforgettable moments in sport.
The reason why I'm smiling, I might get in trouble for this.
Search Sports Uncovered to start listening today.
Who says you can't have a laugh while getting serious about America's pastime? On the daily podcast Locked On MLB, comedian and baseball fanatic Paul Francis Sullivan talks about each team, each pennant race, and everything else in the game, from rule changes and controversies to baseball cards and stadium food.
For those of you who are not familiar with me or the old show, I love to obsess over baseball. I'm talking baseball over the Super Bowl. We had a TV showing the division series during my wedding.
Search Locked On MLB on TuneIn to listen today.
You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
We're all guilty of spending too much time on social media. Why not add something genuinely useful to your feed with TuneIn? Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to learn about some of the best stuff happening around the app. You might just discover your next audio obsession.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Stay close to college hoops conversation with the College Basketball Talk podcast from NBC Sports. Join Rob Doster and Bobby Reagan for weekly recaps of what's happening in every conference, nostalgic flashbacks to classic games, and big picture discussions on the future of the sport.
Yes, they found a way to ensure that there was a financial incentive for be able to get paid for K to go there, if that makes sense. But it's not, there was still a recruitment involved, right? Let me think about it like this.
Search College Basketball Talk on TuneIn to listen.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. On this day in 1984, Pete Rose plays in the recorded 3,309th game, surpassing Carl Yastrzemski.
As his career went on, the hitting records and milestones kept piling up for Pete, though not all of them occurred while wearing a Reds uniform. Rose became the NL career hit leader on 1984.
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, search sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
Are you ready for the realest first-hand take of what's happening in the NBA? On their podcast, All the Smoke, former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson bring their fiery intensity to the mic, dishing on the latest news and drama from on and off the court without boundaries.
Half man, half amazing. My friend, our brother, Vince Carter, man. Welcome to the show.
Yo, what's up, man?
What's up, my brother?
Man,
Search All the Smoke on TuneIn to listen.
Wanna bet football can make you feel nostalgic?
Playing days are over, so...
On the podcast, NFL Alumni Lounge, Charlie Booth sits down with retired NFL legends to talk about their careers, life after football, and everything in between.
Mr. Darren Waller, good to have you.
Yes, sir, it's good to be here.
Dana White, welcome to the Alumni Lounge.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Big member of our NFL alumni family, the CEO of the XFL, Mr. Oliver Luck.
Charlie, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
We're here with the president, Mr. Eric Price. Good to see you.
Search NFL Alumni Lounge on TuneIn to listen.
Wondering what to play next? Want to know what other TuneIn listeners are listening to right now? Head to the trending section under Browse to explore the most popular stations and podcasts on TuneIn today. Millions of listeners like you can't be wrong.
A side effect of a rise in terrorism, a rise in massive amounts of migration, because if sub-Saharan Africa and some areas in Central and South America are suddenly of critical revenues, and we're talking about sometimes 90% of revenues, and even in Mexico, it's about a third of government tax revenues. If you just magically just take that away overnight, or even over a short period of time, that's going to have an impact. If we want to solve some of the migration issues in the U.S., we're going to have to stop thinking about it as building walls and things like that, and actually make sure that there is economic activity on the other side that incentivizes people to stay where they are, to have economic activity, and to have mature and happy lives. And we have to make sure that's true across the globe. So and it's going to take massive amounts of investment. And that's why I think the IMF, together with nonprofits and the banks, need to come together and say, what are the countries that are most at risk, and how do we incentivize economic activity in those countries to prevent the kind of risks and challenges that I foresee.
Yeah, Amos, it's critically important to identify the problem first and maybe set some goals. At the same time, achieving is something different. This is not the first time in history that an oil-rich country has said we need to diversify and have other industries. Has it ever worked? I mean, Russia's been working on this for years. Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is trying it once again. You've had this in Nigeria. You've had it in Venezuela, country after country. Has any country ever managed to do that?
Yeah, you bring up a very good point that this is not a new issue. But I think that it's a different circumstance that we're facing now. I think that before, it only happened during oil shocks, price shocks, when, the late 90s, when we had the price go down to $10 a barrel. What happens now is different. What the corona crisis, the COVID-19 crisis has given us is a window or a dress rehearsal for what's going to be coming down the pike. And then it won't be temporary. It won't be part of a cycle. It's going to be something more systemic and ongoing into the future, and it will become the new normal of low oil prices at that point as demand wanes. And demand won't go away. It will just stop growing first. It will peak, and then it will start declining slowly. And that's why I think we have to think about it a little bit differently. The countries you mentioned have resources, they have reserves, and they're in a different category of needing to spend those resources in order to diversify their economy. I'm worried that in the first wave, we have to think about countries that do not have any reserves, that live on a budget knife's edge, where any collapse in price, even a small one or a short-term one, has major implications. And the lower for longer scenario has catastrophic implications. And that's where I think we have to focus first. So you're right. The world has not done it. We've never done it. We've talked ad nauseum about it. What needs to change is to recognize, what did we do wrong? And what we did wrong is we saw it as development assistance. We were giving charity. That's not what this needs to be. It needs to be investment-driven and economic buildup with the community, the global community, coming together to achieve it.
Yeah. And your piece in The Atlantic is an important first step in that direction. Thank you so much to Amos Hochstein. He is now with Tellurian. In the meantime, coming up here, we're going to talk about two important Supreme Court decisions today, one on abortion, one on the CFPB. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Gathering world-renowned experts takes effort.
We have the perfect person.
Asking them the right questions takes Carol Mazur and Jason Kelly.
Is this possibly early indications of a second wave?
Bloomberg Business Week.
Silicon Valley will be forever changed by this pandemic. What's your take?
Are they paying off their balances?
Weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern.
That is a significant shift.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Sweet strawberry icing. You're in Goodwill, and just past that vintage denim jacket you spot miniature donut earrings. You lean in. Ah, that's the scent of shopping success. Because at Goodwill, every item you buy funds local job training and more. So bring home those donut earrings and bring home so much good to your community. Goodwill. Bring good home. Brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad Council.
What's the true value of your custodial relationship? Ben Harrison of BNY Mellon's Pershing explains.
As sophisticated investors demand more from their advisors, advisory firms, in turn, need to rely on their custodian to help them grow their complex businesses. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, supporting the rapid growth of RIAs is our #1 priority. We understand what it means to deliver true value to our clients who are looking for a custodian that is aligned with their best interest and delivers high-value solutions, all in an open architecture environment with flexibility, choice, and transparency. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength, resiliency, and high-touch service that BNY Mellon Pershing provides. When you work with Pershing, we put your business first. Can your custodian say that?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Pershing Advisor Solutions, LLC. Member FINRA SIPC.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. The Supreme Court of the United States today issued a really important decision on abortion. And here to take us through is Greg Stohr. He's our Supreme Court reporter. So, Greg, a lot of people were looking at this for some indication of where Roe against Wade was going. I'm not sure we got that.
And the opinion from John Roberts that was the key to the case said we're starting with the premise that the Planned Parenthood versus Casey decision, which is the 92 ruling that reaffirmed Roe, he said that we're starting with that as our premise. Nobody's asking us to overturn that ruling. But it did suggest that the Chief Justice is going to stick pretty closely to precedent here unless there's a compelling reason to do otherwise.
You know, it was a fascinating case for a couple of reasons. I thought, first of all, there's no majority opinion. It's 4 people for one opinion. Then Chief Justice Roberts by himself joining the judgment, not the opinion. And at the same time, Chief Justice Roberts voted the other way on the case that he's deferring to when it came up a few years ago.
Yeah, and he spent much of the opinion explaining why he still thought he was right in that case. But he said because the Louisiana law in this case requiring all doctors who perform abortions to have admitting privileges at a local hospital was virtually identical to the Texas law the court struck down 4 years ago. He said the analysis here is the same. It has a significant burden on the ability of women to get an abortion if they want one, and therefore I'm going to abide by the precedent and vote to strike it down.
Yeah, I'm not sure this was ever on the table, but some people were concerned about maybe with the new justices on the Supreme Court, they might overturn Roe against Wade. If there's concern about that, I would take what Chief Justice Roberts did here as being an indication, at least, not for sure, that that's not in the cards.
I would agree with that. The people who would like to see Roe overturned were really optimistic when they got first Neil Gorsuch and then Brett Kavanaugh on the court that there might be real movement in that direction. But John Roberts, at a minimum, really hit the brake pedal here. There will probably be other cases. I would be surprised if there weren't other cases where he votes to uphold abortion restrictions that might not have been allowable a few years ago. But in terms of overruling the court's precedents and, calling into question the court's legitimacy in his mind, he seems very loath to do that in this context.
Finally, Greg, we're down to the bottom of the barrel here, almost to the end of the term. What's the one decision you're really looking forward to hearing?
Well, certainly there's actually two. There are the subpoena cases involving the president and his financial records. There is a case involving Congress trying to get them. There's a case involving a New York grand jury trying to get them. The president says, I have a significant privacy interest here. That's going to be a huge case no matter how it comes out.
Right. Greg, it's always great to talk with you. That's Greg Storr. He is the Bloomberg Supreme Court reporter. In the meantime, we're going to have a second hour Balance of Power on radio. And we're going to talk to, among other people, Ben Wickler. He's the chairman of the Wisconsin Democratic Party. That does it for the first hour of Balance of Power. I'm David Weston. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuit look at luxury. Does a strong glass of Irish whiskey or London dry martini sound like the perfect way to face the second wave? Be prepared to pony up. Bars across the U.S. already reeling from lost business during the coronavirus lockdown are now grappling with the possibility of higher prices. New tariffs this week could go as high as 100% on top of the 25% tariffs enacted this past October, forcing high-end specialty bars with European imports to pass the prices on to consumers. In Singapore, a mansion/museum that would put the semi-fictional world of crazy rich Asians to shame has hit the market for $45 million. The house, known as a good-class bungalow, is a type of property in the land-scarce city-state that is especially prized among the ultra-rich. Of the 500 relics on view are 15-ton stone lions, rare bone sculptures, and Qing Dynasty silk paintings, all on sale as well for the right price. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
Working from home, take a little more time for breakfast. Tom Keene.
How will this pandemic change your NASDAQ?
Jonathan Farrell.
When you look at that sector, some of these companies won't exist, will they?
And Lisa Abramowitz.
They've only continued to increase the delinquencies and defaults.
Crunch data topped with fresh world news. Bloomberg Surveillance. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. And now, watch us on Bloomberg Television.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the Lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care would love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
World headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Stocks are at the best level of the day. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all advancing on this back-to-work Monday, indeed a holiday-shortened week. Stocks rose after better-than-expected economic data offset concern over an increase in coronavirus cases. The dollar advanced. Treasuries little change to the 10-year. The yield now 0.64%. S&P's up 35. That is a gain of 1.2%. The Dow up 436 points, up 1.8%. NASDAQ up 100 points, higher now by 1%. The price of gold down 0.1% right now, $17.69 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude pushing back close to $40 a barrel, $39.59 right now. Crude oil is up by 2.9%. And with more, a closer look now at commodities, here's Bloomberg's Renita Young.
The spread of the coronavirus is escalating copper supply concerns. This comes after prices broke through a key level on Friday for the first time since the COVID-19 outbreak became a global pandemic. And over in crude oil, a boost from a weaker U.S. dollar offsets concerns that the resurgence of COVID-19 will crimp fuel demand. Still, sentiment in crude markets remain fragile after last week's 3.2% slide. Renita Young, Bloomberg Radio.
A surge in Boeing lifting the Dow Jones Industrial Average today after U.S. aviation regulators approved a critical set of test flights on the grounded 737 MAX. Boeing shares up now by 7.7%. 102 on Wall Street. Time now for the Market Drivers Report with a focus on American depository receipts. Here he is, still working from home, Dave Wilson.
Thanks, Charlie. ADRs are higher. They're not quite as much as U.S. shares. The S&P ADR index is up 0.7%, and the S&P 500 is higher by 1.1%. BP has risen 3.6% in U.S. trading. The UK oil company agreed to sell its petrochemical unit to Luxembourg-based Insos Group Holdings for $5 billion. Now, BP had sold a related business to Ineos in 2005. Another UK company, Barclays, has gained 4.5%. The lender was favored over its peers by Bank of America, which has a buy rating on the stock. B of A wrote that Barclays is uniquely positioned to weather a downturn tied to the coronavirus. And Germany's BioNTech has climbed 4%. The developer of a COVID-19 vaccine is raising $250 million privately through sales of stock and convertible notes. Singapore's state-run investment company Temasek Holdings is among the buyers. And Brazil's BRF has fallen 4.3%. The meat processor was cut to the equivalent of whole from buy at Barclays, which said the coronavirus may reduce Brazilian demand more than it had expected, Charlie.
Thank you very much, Dave Wilson, keeping track of those American depository receipts. After the bell, we'll be hearing from Micron Technology, Cineplex, and Herman Miller. Again, recapping here, equities surging, S&P's up 34, up 1.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Balance of Power.
Everybody in the world has one common enemy, and that's to win the war against this virus.
The first thing you do is listen to the medical professionals.
Those people that lost their pay, we want to see that pay continued.
Where the world of politics meets the world of business.
Our priority is the health and well-being and the lives of the American people.
We want to make sure that we are continuing to support our hospitals.
We've unleashed our most potent weapon of all, the courage of the American people.
Balance of Power with David Weston on Bloomberg Radio.
Concerns about rising COVID-19 cases in southern states continue to increase, raising doubts about the recovery. The Justice Department moves closer to a possible antitrust action against Google, and even the way people campaign gets partisan. From New York, welcome to the second hour of Bloomberg Balance of Power. I'm David Weston. How we perceive the public health, the economy, and even whether we should wear masks increasingly depends on whether we're Democrats or Republicans. And as we head toward an election in just over 4 months, it looks like even the way we campaign is going to depend on what people's political affiliation is. We welcome now Ben Wickler. He is chairman of the Wisconsin Democratic Party. Thanks. Welcome back. It's good to have you here, Ben. Give us a sense of what's going on up in Wisconsin, and particularly the difference between the way Republicans apparently are going to campaign and Democrats.
Great to be back with you, David. This is it's America's Dairyland, it says on our license plate. It feels like America's battleground here in Wisconsin. Trump and Pence were both here last week. The GOP is the campaign has leaked to the Washington Post that they're increasingly focused on Wisconsin as the place they're going to try to win because they're losing so badly now in Michigan and Pennsylvania. And you can see a stark difference. This last weekend, the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, working in our partnership with the Biden campaign, we organized a weekend of action where we had thousands of volunteers and hundreds of local teams making hundreds of thousands of phone calls to voters across the state. And meanwhile, the Republican Party and the Trump campaign was sending volunteers out to knock on people's doors. It feels to me like the last two-thirds empty Tulsa rally all over again. From everything we can see, there are not a lot of volunteers turning out, and not a lot of people who are opening up their doors. The Trump campaign's out of step with the reality of this public health nightmare, and we're seeing record connection rates. People want to spend longer on the phone. They are hungry for contact, but they're also concerned about this virus, and we're trying to make sure we're paying attention to both of those things.
So separate out those two things if you can. That is to say, the public health risk. I mean, obviously there are certain risks involved if you're going around, you're meeting with people personally, particularly if you don't have masks on and things like that, as opposed to the effectiveness of doing it. Are you saying not only is there a risk that they should not be running, in your view, but also that you're seeing it may not be working?
When we stopped in-person canvassing in March 12th was the day we went fully virtual. The reports we were getting from the field were that people didn't want to open the door and would sometimes get mad that people were canvassing. Now, maybe for hardcore Trump supporters who discount the risk of coronavirus, aren't wearing masks, maybe that's not true. But frankly, that raises the level of public health concern in my mind. And the photos that I've seen of Republicans canvassing, they are not wearing masks either. So I do think there's a question of the effectiveness of the tactic in this situation. I also think, politically speaking, if you send someone out who's COVID positive and they infect a whole bunch of voters, that could really create a political whirlwind. I hope that doesn't happen for public health reasons. But I imagine the Trump team has to really hope that's not happening for political reasons as well. And the third thing is that people appreciate the help. We're calling people and walking them through the process of requesting absentee ballots. And what we find is, people are grateful for assistance with casting votes in a way that's safe, especially now that we seem to be watching case counts rise again in Wisconsin as well as across the country.
What about November and the way we're going to vote? As far as you see it in Wisconsin, but also nationwide, do you expect there will be a large swing over toward mail-in or other kinds of absentee ballots?
This spring, in our Wisconsin Supreme Court election, our minds exploded as we watched the numbers roll in. Wisconsin's never had more than 5, maybe 10% of the absolute max absentee ballots. This spring, it was 61% of all votes cast. And we are expecting record-breaking numbers as we go into the fall. All 6 of the most contested battleground states have no excuse absentee voting, which means any voter can request a ballot to be able to vote from home. That's Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, North Carolina, Florida, and Arizona. I think in those states and in any other state that makes it possible for people to request absentee ballots without having a specific issue, I think numbers are going to be through the roof. And that changes everything about how you organize a campaign. It's not about a hockey stick build-up to the final day. It is about a long slog, a kind of intensive long-term project of getting people to request absentee ballots, receiving them, filling them out. In Wisconsin, they need a witness signature, and then sending them in and making sure that they're counted. That's the work of weeks and months, not a final GOTV weekend.
So, Ben, I think I can hear the enthusiasm in your voice. And right now, the polls seem to be moving in the direction of the former vice president and away from President Trump, particularly in some battleground states. How are they going to come after you? What are you worried about? Where do you have some vulnerability, do you think?
The Trump strategy really seems to lean heavily on suppressing the vote, on convincing people that they shouldn't vote by mail, discounting it. This seems to be kind of resulting in Republicans being more likely to be skeptical of something that would enable them to vote. So what I'm concerned about is that they're going to try to do things to invalidate the process that voters are trying to use down the road. We saw this spring in our Supreme Court race, litigation all the way up to the United States Supreme Court that resulted in thousands of ballots being tossed. We have excellent counsel. We're in court now and probably will be all the way through Election Day. But the fight over the rules seems like one of the critical pieces of this whole thing. The other thing is that when Trump is against a wall, he tends to reach for the same tactic, which is to divide people, make them afraid of each other, especially by inflaming racial tensions with inflammatory rhetoric. And I'm concerned about that for the country. Politically, that also seems to be backfiring. Since the murder of George Floyd, there's a kind of a reckoning across the country, especially with white Americans, recognizing that the wounds of racism are very real and need to be addressed. So the usual playbook doesn't seem to be working for Trump right now, but what we've seen in before is that he just doubles down and doubles down until he's able to break through. And I'm concerned about what that's going to look like.
And finally, and perhaps briefly here, Ben, give us a sense of the VP choice. I don't think you're going to name somebody, but what are you looking for?
The thing I want in the VP is the same thing I wanted and got in our general election candidate, which is somebody who can listen to and connect with voters in all parts of Wisconsin across all communities. Wisconsin is a state where you got to show up, even if it's virtual. You got to show up and listen to folks in rural Wisconsin, in communities of color, in African American, Latino, Hmong, and Asian American, Pacific Islander, and tribal nations, with suburban voters, with ex-urban voters. I mean, there's a lot of different types of communities in our state, and there's some common elements you'll hear from everybody. But showing them that you're tuning in and listening and reflecting their language back to them, that's what I want to see.
Okay, there you have it. From an enthusiastic, I think it's fair to say, Ben Wickler. He's the head of the Democratic Party in Wisconsin. Coming up here, the domino theory, last seen around the time of the Vietnam War, may be coming back. That's according to Hal Brands, professor at Johns Hopkins. We'll talk to him next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
Coronavirus proved that every aspect of our lives, from business to health, is connected to Asia.
Healthcare firms testing the appetite for IPOs in Hong Kong too.
But you already knew that.
COVID-19 certainly had an impact on this.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia, tonight at 6 Eastern.
What does that mean for Asia if the dollar remains on the back foot for the foreseeable future?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing, but not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. This breaks my heart, and it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and gives it to families in need. To help, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
It's a stock market driver.
Now they're starting to see a little bit of panic from policymakers.
It's a global political force.
How will this epidemic reshape big tech and its relationship with Washington?
It's a virus.
This coronavirus is a global pandemic.
Is there a safe haven?
And the facts matter.
The situation is so bad because of the virus that is simply unavoidable.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
When you went car shopping, you meant business. You aced vehicle history searches and test drives. You out-salesmaned the salesman. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll have the info you need to get more for your future. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to speeding past financial challenges, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Economics.
All this doom and gloom.
Listen, that's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
London. Toolstation are here to help get your job safely started and finished. With over 60 branches within the M25. All open with social distancing and contactless click and collect from 5 minutes. And with 20,000 top trade quality products to choose from. Order online now for collection in London branches and get £5 off when you spend over £30 with the code LON530. So, get your job started at toolstation.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Should your kids go back to school? Ask Andrea. She's a teacher.
We're doing everything we can to keep the children safe and happy at school, which is why it's great that more of those who can are coming back. Not only for their education, but for their overall well-being too. It gives them a routine, helps develop their social skills, and they get to see their friends too.
If your child is eligible, they should return to school. The government is working towards getting all pupils back in September. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
When you're buying tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to an algorithm or to someone called Al, or Chantel, or Raj, or Fiona, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hey, it's Ali. Can I give you a hand?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
Whether you're dreaming of a house the size of a football stadium or a football stadium in the back garden of your house, what you need is dream come true money. Luckily, Friday's Euro Million Super Jackpot is a massive £110 million. Now that's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
When the world stopped, people in our local communities didn't. At the Co-op, we want to say thank you to all the local heroes. Daksha wanted to help the NHS, so she and her husband Parish cooked 50 meals for a hospital in Harrow. But they didn't stop there. They've set up the Community Response Kitchen, delivering to hospitals, schools and homeless shelters across London. Now they're delivering between 1,000 and 3,000 meals every day. And they've achieved all this with no funding, just the support of local businesses and local people. To Daksha and Paresh and all the local heroes that keep our communities going, the Co-op says thank you.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters. I'm Charlie Pellet. It is an up day on Wall Street with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all advancing after better-than-expected economic data offset concern over an increase in coronavirus cases. S&P climbed after data showed pending home sales posted a record gain exceeding all forecasts. Here's where we stand. S&P now up by 35 points, up 1.1%. The Dow's up 461, up 1.8%. NASDAQ's up 91, higher by 0.9%. 10-year yield 0.63%. We've got gold down 82 cents the ounce at $17.70, a drop of less than 0.1%. West Texas Intermediate crude now up 2.6%, $39.52 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It's time now for Bloomberg Opinion, and today we welcome columnist Hal Brands, professor at Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies. So, Professor, welcome. Great to have you on. Now, you have a piece out about the domino theory, and I must say I'm old enough that I was in school during the Vietnam War, and for those who were against the war, it was sort of sport to make fun of the domino theory, and so I was surprised to read that maybe there's something left to it. Tell us exactly about the original domino theory and why it became discredited, at least in some corners.
So the domino theory essentially held that setbacks could accumulate in a geopolitical consequence. And so if you lost one country, if one country fell under the control of hostile or communist forces, then other countries would quickly follow. And that was a mainstay of U.S. foreign policy throughout the Cold War. It motivated a number of American interventions in places like Korea and Vietnam, and the latter intervention in particular was the main reason why the domino theory became discredited. Obviously, the impact of intervention in Korea was catastrophic from an American perspective, as well as from a Vietnamese perspective. And so in the wake of that war, the underlying theory was discredited as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, when I was a student approaching the age and getting the age of drafting, of being drafted, the claim literally was we're going to lose India. If we lose Vietnam, it'll go to Southeast Asia, it'll go to Burma, and they'll take India. And a lot of people at the time said, really? Do we really think we're going to lose India because we lose Hanoi?
So there were always exaggerated and then more nuanced versions of the domino theory. And so the part that you just referenced, I think, was the exaggerated version, where if you lost one small country in Southeast Asia, an entire continent could follow. There was better reason to worry that the loss of Vietnam might endanger other positions nearby Vietnam, or that it might put greater pressure on countries like Thailand and Indonesia that mattered more to American security. And more broadly, what we can see from looking at the history of the Cold War is that there was a certain importance of momentum in that conflict. And so in a variety of places, one setback did lead to another. So when the Fidel Castro's communist movement took over in Cuba in 1959, it helped to spark communist-leaning insurgencies in countries throughout Latin America. When Vietnam collapsed in 1975, Laos and Cambodia went with it. The Korean War itself.
Hello, Professor. Are you there? Hello, Oh, I'm sorry. We've just lost Professor Brooks. That's very unfortunate because it's a fascinating piece that I recommend to everybody on how, in fact, there may be something left of dominoes theory when it comes to China. In the meantime, let's turn to Joshua Sharfstein. He is Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health Vice Dean. He talked with Bloomberg Television's Francine Lacqua earlier about how many states are going to lockdown. I should mention that the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, the founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies.
I can't tell you exactly how many, but I think we're seeing the beginning of that right now in Texas, Arizona, and Florida, among others, reversing some of the initial decisions that were made too hastily to reopen and rethinking the idea that, young people are invulnerable to this disease.
So, Joshua, what exactly happened? Did we open too quickly in certain states, or did we open badly in certain states?
We opened too quickly. I mean, it was obvious. Even the White House guidance wasn't being followed. The White House guidance was the number of cases should be going down, things should really be moving in the right direction, and that capabilities to respond to outbreaks should really be in place before you start reopening, particularly before you start reopening, each level one on top of the other. But the states just plowed forward, and there was sort of a moment where governors just felt like, this was the right thing to do. The virus was just sitting there ready to do its thing, and that's what the virus has done. You get people into bars, and the virus is going to spread quite a bit.
We understand from the U.S. Health Secretary, Alex Azar, that the window is closing on halting the spread. Is it too late? What measures need to be put in place now to get a handle on the situation?
I'll be honest, I'm not sure we know exactly what Secretary Azar is talking about. I think he should have been much more vocal when these states were doing the wrong thing. I think the federal response in terms of communicating clearly about what is happening, what needs to be done, and how to fix this has just been terrible from the beginning. It's been way over-politicized. We haven't heard from the CDC. So, my view is that, yes, we can get a hold of this. There are things that every, country that's been successful has done, and we just have to focus on doing them.
Dr. Zarstein, how do you reopen correctly? So is it the R number, this famous R number, that needs to be below, 1 to at least measure how many people are getting the disease by one person? Or what metrics would you look at to reopen?
That's a hard number to calculate in real time. It's sort of calculated best looking backwards. So you really want to have a dashboard of critical outcomes, the number of positive tests, the percent of tests that are positive, the number of people in the hospital, the number of people in the intensive care unit, and you want to see that they're very clearly going down. And then you want to open slowly. And certain things, we're learning, and the world is learning, really aren't that safe to reopen. So you're never going to get to completely open until we have a vaccine and can really control the spread in those, intense indoor settings.
Okay, are there states that are getting it right?
Well, there are states that have really locked down, controlled the spread, but now are starting to reopen. So the right question is, have states been able to reopen without having this big explosion of cases? And it's a little too early to say that right now. We're seeing certainly pretty good control in the Northeast now, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, even New York. But the key is going to be, as those states reopen, whether we can stay vigilant, whether we can reopen slowly, not just reopen everything, whether we can take precautions, and whether individuals will also take precautions in their lives.
Coming up, we hear from President Ronald Reagan's economic advisor, Art Laffer. That's next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stocks are posting gains on economic data. The Dow is up 435 points, NASDAQ climbing 96, S&P 500 up 35. Home buyers were busy last month. The National Association of Realtors says contract signings to purchase previously owned homes climbed 44% in May on falling mortgage rates. Makeup and perfume giant Coty is buying a 20% share of Kim Kardashian's beauty business for $200 million. They plan to develop new products for skin, hair, and nails. And Papa John's board member and franchise owner Shaquille O'Neal is launching the chain's newest and biggest pizza ever, the Shaq-a-Roni. $1 from every pie sold will go to charities, including the United Negro College Fund and the Boys and Girls Club of America. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived in Philadelphia. Local time is 3:05 p.m. and the temperature is 67 degrees. At this time, you are now free to use your cellular devices.
You know that feeling when you get to turn your phone on after the plane lands? You can have that feeling every time you drive. Make sure your cell phone is stowed away whenever you are behind the wheel.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
At Bloomberg, we know a lot of financial experts.
He's a former president of the European Central Bank.
Your Global Financial Warriors is a classic textbook.
A lot of political experts.
If you were advising the President of the United States, what's the thing that he's not doing that he should do?
And lucky for you, we know a lot of science experts, too.
You talked about those reagents which are necessary for the testing.
It's also the behavioral psychological approach.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Bloomberg and Eden Vance.
What if the world listened more? Maybe it could become a better place. Because when we really listen, we start to notice things that don't sound quite right. They might not seem obvious at first, but listen closely and they stand out like a sore plum. And the more we listen, the more we learn. Our ears help us find better solutions. And things can change from this to something a little more like this. The new Honda Jazz is a hybrid. Honda, the power of dreams.
And action!
I was offered one.
Cut. That's not on the script.
I was offered one. Get it!
Ladies and gentlemen, I was offered one.
Come, boy. I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
London. Toolstation are here to help get your job safely started and finished. With over 60 branches within the M25. All open with social distancing and contactless click and collect from 5 minutes. And with 20,000 top trade quality products to choose from. Order online now for collection in London branches and get £5 off when you spend over £30 with the code LON530. So, get your job started at toolstation.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Should your kids go back to school? Ask Andrea. She's a teacher.
We're doing everything we can to keep the children safe and happy at school, which is why it's great that more of those who can are coming back. Not only for their education, but for their overall well-being too. It gives them a routine, helps develop their social skills, and they get to see their friends too.
If your child is eligible, they should return to school. The government is working towards getting all pupils back in September. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Whether you're dreaming of a house the size of a football stadium or a football stadium in the back garden of your house, what you need is dream come true money. Luckily, Friday's Euro Million Super Jackpot is a massive £110 million. Now that's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Ready for a one-of-a-kind look at the NFL? On the PFF NFL podcast, Steve Palazzolo and Sam Munson interpret the unique stats of Pro Football Focus to analyze the league, uncover secret superstars, and discuss which teams to watch out for in the next Super Bowl.
Let's talk some football. Let's do it, Steve. All sorts of stuff. We're going to do most improved defenses around the NFL. Solomon Wilcots, our very own. He went into some detail over at PFF.com. Most improved defenses around the
Search PFF NFL on TuneIn to listen.
To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Indoor gatherings. Wash your hands and don't touch your face. Stay at least 6 feet from people you don't live with. Wear a mask. Don't share food, toys, or other items, and avoid shared surfaces. Open windows for better ventilation. Try to avoid gathering indoors as much as possible. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Balance of Power with David Weston.
Coming up on Balance of Power, he became synonymous with supply-side economics during the Reagan administration. Economist Art Laffer applies his thinking to an economy badly in need of help. But first, let's get a market check with Charlie Pellet.
Hi, thank you very much. And developing story right now, Federal Reserve has announced that the primary market corporate credit facility has opened for business, the last of its 9 pandemic emergency lending programs to become operational. The program was announced back in March as a flight from risk began raising borrowing costs for corporations of all times. We have got, of all kinds, I should say, we've got stocks higher across the board here. Stocks advancing after better than expected economic data offset concern over an increase in coronavirus cases. The dollar advanced, treasuries a little changed. Right now we have got the 10-year yield at 0.64%, down 1/32. S&P up 35, up 1.2%. The Dow advancing 473, up 1.9%. NASDAQ up 91, that is a gain of 0.9%. Gold down 0.1%, 17.69 the ounce, and crude pushing higher, up 2.6% right now, up $1 a barrel at $39.52 on West Texas Intermediate crude. As for the overall market backdrop and where we go from here, Samantha Azzarello is global market strategist at JP Morgan Investment Management, and she says it's hard for markets to move higher because there's so much uncertainty.
Every single consumer, right, deciding to go back to a restaurant or not, deciding to send their child to summer camp or not, right, and we can go on, and all of these decisions roll up into the aggregate, and we just don't have a good pulse on that.
Cirque du Soleil Entertainment Group has filed for bankruptcy protection after the coronavirus pandemic forced it to close shows around the world, bringing one of the best-known brands in live performance to its knees. The Montreal-based company is controlled by private equity giant TPG Capital. Recapping, S&P 500 index up 36 points, up 1.2%. The Dow up 477, up 1.9%. NASDAQ up 92, up by 1%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of Power continues. Once again, here's your host, David Weston.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pellet. When Ronald Reagan took office as president, the U.S. faced negligible growth and 14% on inflation. Economist Arthur Laffer was a senior economic advisor to President Reagan throughout his 8 years in office, at the end of which growth had returned and inflation was in check. He is the founder and chairman of Laffer Associates, and we welcome him now back to Bloomberg. So thanks very much for being here. Give us your prescription for the economy right now. It's a very different economy from the one inherited by Ronald Reagan back in 1981.
Well, thank you very much, David. It's fun to be with you, by the way. The prescription for the economy, I mean, obviously the solution to a large extent depends upon COVID-19, and we need to make sure we're spending as much as we can and doing as much as we possibly can to find vaccines or whatever else is to get that thing out of the picture. Once it's out of the picture, that will really change the economic picture a lot. But in the interim, what I think the administration should do right now is do a waiver on a payroll tax. I mean, if you want more people working, reduce taxes on working people. That's a very simple model there. And the payroll tax costs workers about 7.65% of their paycheck. It costs employers about 7.65% of their paycheck. If you removed that payroll tax for even through December 31st, you would increase the incentives for workers to work dramatically. It would increase the incentives for employers to employ workers, to retain workers, to use them more fully, and would really make a very big difference just jump-starting the economy and getting it going. By having the termination date at December 31st, businesses will try to move their production forward as fast as they can. Now, there's one thing, David, I think is really important here to realize is that cutting taxes is very, very different than increasing spending. I know a lot of economists think of it all as stimulus, but it's not. When you cut taxes, you're doing it. You're really reducing the amount of control government has over the money because they don't have to collect it, then pay all the toll for the troll, and then spend it. Every dollar of tax reduction is worth about $1.35 of spending just on the pure fiscal policy issue. So it's very efficient money doing a payroll tax waiver than it is spending money.
Art, I mean, you're known as the father of supply-side economics, but what about the demand side of it here? I mean, in fact, personal income is up, savings are up, people have more money, but they're afraid to go out and spend it, and that is the COVID-19 virus, I think. Is there anything taxes are going to do to that? Even if I get lower tax, I have more money, if I'm scared of getting sick or dying, I'm going to be reluctant to go out and spend it.
Well, let me just say, the first thing I mentioned was getting rid of COVID-19, which is critical. I totally, there are things other than taxes. Believe me, I know that. Not many things better and more, but the COVID-19 is a good thing to get rid of, and that would help a lot. But it also helps. You've got people on the sidelines because they've been furloughed. You've got people who are scared and all of that. If they're not in a high-risk category, what you want them to do is to come back to work as fast as they possibly can and feel comfortable doing. By increasing the after-tax return to a worker coming back to work, you'll incentivize them to come back faster. And that's really what we need in the economy to get that V shape. And once you start getting that economy going, I noticed just before the show here, you commented on the stock market rising 477 points today. All of that good news on the economy is really, really important. The payroll tax elimination through December 31st would have an enormously positive impact on the stock market as well, which is really important for getting this economy back on its feet, removing the fears of a depression.
Well, the stock market has really bounced back quite a bit. I mean, there's some hesitation because of some of the increased incidence of COVID-19, but there's a big bounce back in the stock market. But some people would say the S&P economy is different from the Main Street economy. And even as you talk about this, it's one thing to be furloughed. It's another thing. We have restaurants wiped out across the country that are likely not to come back. There are going to be a fair number of businesses, I think, Art, that just don't come back, whether there's a payroll tax or not.
Yeah, you're right. There are a lot of businesses that won't come back. But if you want to encourage a new business to take its place, I mean, unfortunately, the COVID-19 has wreaked a lot of damage, some of it permanent in some areas. But, a restaurant that goes under now, there'll be a restaurant that will take its place in the future, and all of those will benefit from the payroll tax waiver as well. So, what we're trying to do is really get the economy back as fast as possible and have as few of those companies go under that need not go under. And that's where it is. It's just economics, though. It doesn't solve the disease problem. It doesn't change the spin of the earth or anything else. But it does have a huge impact on the economy, which matters to all of us. I mean, when you look at the damage done by the downturn of the economy, it's huge, especially in the poor, the minorities, the disenfranchised are just slammed by this. And we need to get it back up and get them back into employment as fast as possible.
I'm so glad you raised that, Art, because I was just going to ask that, because you've seen a greatly disproportionate effect on particularly blacks and Hispanics across the country, both physically in terms of their susceptibility to disease, but also economically. And when you saw the jobs numbers start to come back, the black didn't. The black unemployment did not go down. Should we be doing anything to tailor it in that direction, or is this rising tide lifting all boats?
Well, this is rising tide lifts all boats. That's first. And when you remember Benjamin Hook, head of Committee on Racial Equality, he had a phrase that has always stuck in my mind: blacks are hired last and fired first. You really take a strong economy to really reduce that black unemployment rate, increase black employment enormously, which is what we all want to do, and what Trump literally did do before the pandemic had hit. I mean, he had been enormously successful on minority unemployment, minority employment, and we want to get back as fast as possible. And it is a rising tide. Now, were you to ask me how to focus on minority employment specifically, that's why I wrote Enterprise Zones back in 1976, 1977, when I was at the University of Chicago. I did it because, here you have areas of the world that are just been devastated for literally for decades. What you need to do is do tax-free zones in those areas that have been depressed enormously. My enterprise zone idea, which, by the way, Jack Kemp carried very, very well, that is where you really systemically solve the problem. I'm so worried today, David, that people are looking at symbols rather than substance.
Yeah.
And we need to have substance to really address the minority issue. It can't just be symbols, statues, and stuff like that. Enterprise zones will do a lot to help the inner cities.
Art, we're so fortunate to have you on. Thank you very much for joining us as Art Laffer of Laffer Associates. Coming up, Google might have an antitrust suit in its future. We're going to talk about what that might look like. That's coming up next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
For the Jewish Communal Fund, Noel Spiegel, former senior partner with Deloitte & Touche and past JCF president, discusses the advantages of a donor-advised fund over a private foundation.
There's a lot involved in having a private foundation. You need to engage attorneys, you need to engage accountants, file tax returns. At JCF, all of that is done for you. You don't have to get involved in anything other than making your contribution to your fund and then determining which grants that you want to make.
A JCF fund may be opened with a minimum $5,000 contribution of cash or appreciated securities and can be used as an alternative to or together with a private foundation.
If you have a foundation, you have to list all of the contributions that you made. Potentially anybody, because the information is public, can find out exactly which organizations a foundation has made charitable contributions to.
Let JCF simplify your philanthropy and protect your privacy. Learn more about JCF's private client group at jcfny.org.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit hud.gov/fairhousing. That's hud.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
COVID-19. Can the world...
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Monday evening by the scruff of the neck. Ignore this gloomy weather and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80, or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda, we're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
How do we control coronavirus now? Listen to Claudia. She's a care worker.
I got the call from NHS Test and Trace. Told I'd been in contact with someone with coronavirus. Couldn't believe it. I had to isolate at home for 14 days. Couldn't go to work, couldn't go to the shops, couldn't get out to exercise. I didn't even feel ill. But you know what? To protect my family, my friends, my community, well, you just do it, don't you?
Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
When you're buying tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to a machine or to someone called Mac or Chantel or Raj or Fiona or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hey, it's Ali. Can I give you a hand?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
The big Volkswagen event is now on. If you're after an approved used Volkswagen, for a limited time, you can buy one with 2 years warranty, 2 years MOT cover, 2 years roadside assistance, and 2 services all included at 8.9% APR representative. Hello, sir. Do any take your fancy?
I need to sit down.
The big Volkswagen event. With every type of car on offer, you may have trouble choosing.
with Solutions Personal Contract Plan until 12th of July. At participating retailers on used Volkswagens aged between 90 days and 60 months only. Indemnities may be required. Warranty valid for vehicles up to 100,000 miles at activation. MOT cover is up to 2 years and is underwritten by UK General Insurance Limited. Volkswagen Finance. Contact your local retailer.
Give yourself a Diet Coke break.
Whether you're dreaming of a house the size of a football stadium or a football stadium in the back garden of your house, what you need is dream come true money. Luckily, Friday's Euro Million Super Jackpot is a massive £110 million. Now that's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Hi, I'm an ad for Voxy, the mobile network with endless social media that doesn't eat your data. And I'm here to tell you that summer is on after all. Start that side hustle you've been talking about forever. Or throw a festival in your back garden and live stream it to the world. What are you waiting for? Stay connected, stay endless with Voxy, the mobile network with endless social media. Get 6 gig of data for £10 a month. No contract, cancel anytime. Voice and video calls excluded from endless social apps. Some general data required. 30-day rolling plan, 25 gigabyte roaming. Fair use and terms apply.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. A Boeing 737 MAX is in the air once again. The plane lifted off from a Seattle airfield with a FAA pilot on board. First of several flights to test whether the revamped jetliner is safe following 2 deadly crashes. Right now, it's flying around eastern Washington at about 14,000 feet. Boeing shares, they're higher now, up by about 10%. Stocks rallying today. In fact, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, of which Boeing is a member, best level of the day, up 502 points right now, up 2%, 25,517 on the Dow. S&P up 39, up 1.3%. NASDAQ up 108, that is a gain of 1.1%. 10-year yield 0.64%. We've got gold down 0.1%, 17.69 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude up 3%, 39.65 a barrel. Again, recapping here, stocks higher. S&P up 39, up 1.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of Power continues. Once again, here's your host, the Monday edition, David Weston.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pellet. The Justice Department has been hard at work with state attorneys general to prepare a possible antitrust case challenging Google's dominant position in online advertising. Stephen Houck served as the chief of the Antitrust Bureau in the New York Attorney General's office. He now practices antitrust law at his own firm, and we welcome him to Bloomberg. So welcome, Steve. It's great to have you with us. Give us a sense. We don't know all the ins and outs, obviously. It's kept secret, but what is our sense about where this investigation stands right now?
Well, according to all reports, there's pressure coming from the top down, from the Attorney General, to reach a decision point in late August. To believe what you read in the press, they seem to be intent on suing Google.
And will they do it in conjunction with state attorneys general? Because there's been a lot of back and forth there. I know there have been meetings and things. Would they bring a joint case? How would this work?
Well, it's unclear at this point. As you indicated, I was the state's chief counsel of Microsoft, and there we had 20 states joining with the United States and bringing a lawsuit. Here, it's a little bit difficult to tell. The states seem to be concentrating, from what I can understand, more on ad tech, whereas it's not clear exactly what the DOJ has in mind.
Well, a great point that you raise here, because we've heard various things coming out of the Attorney General Barr, and certainly the President of the United States, complaining about Google and maybe not treating conservative voices fairly, which seems to be a substance of the speech issue. I don't normally associate that with antitrust enforcement. Is there a connection there?
Well, I don't think there is. It's very troublesome to me. It's a First Amendment issue, and anytime the government is leaning on a private entity by using the antitrust laws or some other laws to influence their speech, it's troubling. There are plenty of local monopolies in newspapers, conservative and liberal, and the DOJ rightfully hasn't done anything there. So it seems to me really an improper motivation, and I think it goes beyond the Attorney General. Last month, the President himself tweeted, quote, "The radical left is in total command and control of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Google. The administration is working to remedy this illegal situation." So there you have it right from the top. I think that's what's really motivating this.
Well, and besides President Trump, the Attorney General Barr has taken apparently a very active interest in this. He's even commented on it. That is not typical, isn't it? I mean, typically it's the Assistant Attorney General for Antitrust who runs these things.
Yeah, I would go further and say it's highly unusual. I've been practicing antitrust law for longer than I care to remember, and I don't remember any situation like this. When I was chief of the Antitrust Bureau in New York State, it was, the career people, the experts in antitrust, did an investigation and recommended to the Attorney General whether or not to bring a lawsuit. Here, the pressure seems to be coming from above rather than, coming up from professionals who are telling the Attorney General to have a case here. And the timing also, I think, is suspect. They seem to want to bring a case before the election. So it's an artificial deadline rather than, letting the professionals do, as much work as they can to make sure they have a good case. He's imposing a deadline on them. And, to coin a phrase, it's very sad. I think it's we're seeing the politicization, I can say that word correctly, of antitrust. And that's really what undermines, what undergirds our economy. It's very important to have fair administration of the antitrust laws, just like the criminal laws. And,
Steve,
go ahead.
Steve, you mentioned that you were in the New York State Attorney General's office responsible for antitrust. You oversaw it back in the Microsoft days. What do the states add to the Justice Department? I mean, is there a different form? Is the statute different so they can get at certain actions that the federal government can't get at? I mean, why does that help the case?
Yeah, it's actually not different. So the states go in; they have a right to enforce the federal antitrust laws. So when you file a joint complaint in federal court, you're enforcing the same law. The states can add, I think, they have some resources they can add. I think it, provides some comfort to DOJ that the states are looking at it the same way they are. And then, in Microsoft, at the end, the fact that the states were there allowed us to do some enforcement work after the DOJ stopped. We persuaded the judge that there needed to be a longer enforcement period, and parts of the decree were enforced only by the states. So I think the states do have an important function to play.
Now, it's not just the United States government or the state governments who are really going after Google and other large tech. We also have the EU. We've got the European Commission also with proceedings. They've already done some fines and things like that. Is there a rush here to see who gets there first?
I don't think so. I mean, Europe has done what it's done, and they have a very different antitrust regime than we do. The law is different, and the EU really doesn't have to face an independent judge like you do here. So the antitrust division or the DOJ can't impose a fine without going to court and persuading a judge that they have a case. And I think that's a good discipline for a prosecutor. You have to be sure you can prove a case before you bring it.
Not infrequently in these really big cases like this, it gets settled before it actually goes to trial. Microsoft is the exception to that, but it gets settled somehow. Do we have any sense of what Google could offer up to the Justice Department that might placate them? One of the things I'll just mention specifically is some reports now they're going to start paying news publishers where they're scraping their content and putting it together and aggregating it, which they certainly have benefited from over the years enormously, and have said, no, we're just doing you a favor by linking to you, but now they actually might be coming with some cold hard cash. Is that perhaps a step in the direction of what could be a compromise settlement?
Well, I don't know. The first step really is for the DOJ and or the states to spell out what the case is. I don't think they've done that yet. So it's really hard for Google, even if they were so minded, to offer anything since they don't have any idea what the government thinks they might have done wrong, and then whether or not they think that may be a correct assessment or not. So we haven't even gotten to the point where that makes any sense.
What's the process look like typically, if there is a typically, Steve? Does the Department of Justice sit down with Google and say, okay, here's a draft complaint or a memorandum outlining specifically what we object to so that Google can respond to it before they actually file the complaint?
Yes, that's one of the odd things here. So, yeah, normally that's what happens. And there are good reasons for it. So I was the chief in the antitrust for New York State. I wanted to give the potential defendant a chance to explain something that we think might have been a problem. It may not really be a problem. You hear the explanation, and it gives you a chance to talk settlement. So the government has been interviewing people who have been complaining about Google, so you would think they would at least give Google the equal opportunity to come in and talk to them, which I don't think they've done yet.
Yeah, if they're going to get it done before the election, they don't have much time left. Okay, thank you so much. Great to have you with us. That's Steve Hauk of his own law firm, practiced antitrust law for many years. That's going to do it for Balance of Power for today. I'm David Weston. This is Bloomberg.
At the start of every day, you can...
You know that feeling? That moment feels good, right? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
My name is Danya. I moved to Manchester in 2010. I came from Afghanistan. The first school day was a bit tough. I had no friends, couldn't speak English, and felt a bit left out. My high school teacher was very supportive. She matched me up with friends that spoke the same language as me. Having friends gave me a lot of confidence. I felt like I'm not being left out.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Get free one-to-one support with our teacher training advisors to get one step closer to the classroom. Subject to eligibility. Search Get Into Teaching.
Whether you're dreaming of a house the size of a football stadium or a football stadium in the back garden of your house, what you need is dream come true money. Luckily, Friday's Euro Million Super Jackpot is a massive £110 million. Now that's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
It's been a while since we've all heard this sound. The sound of being free to move. Ah, we've missed you, road. Driving as we please may not be the easiest thing right now. But it couldn't be easier to drive away in a Volvo this weekend with 0% APR finance at the Volvo Select Approved Used Car event. For everyone's safety, your visit will need to be arranged in advance. Book your place at volvocars.co.uk.
Used vehicles up to 4 years old. Participating retailers. 50% deposit on minimum £7,000. Conditional sale. Terms, eligibility, guarantee requirements and conditions apply. Volvo Car Financial Services.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. On this day in 1984, Pete Rose plays in the recorded 3,309th game, surpassing Carl Yastrzemski.
As his career went on, the hitting records and milestones kept piling up for Pete, though not all of them occurred while wearing a Reds uniform. Rose became the NL career hit leader on 1984.
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, search sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Live from New York and New Jersey, streaming on YouTube. It is Monday, June 29th, 2020. Jason, is it week 16?
16, baby.
Wow, 16. Yeah, there we have it, right? Oh.
So, starting the fourth month.
God, it's unbelievable. And it's a new week, and I feel like,
I'm sorry,
again,
starting the fifth? Is that right? Starting
well, 4
the fifth
times
month.
4 is 6. Yeah. Exactly, right? All right, so a new week, and I feel like we've said this a lot. We've got a new mood on Wall Street.
We do. It's sort of remarkable. I think, we tend to have these conversations on Mondays where we've been reading the papers and watching the news all weekend. There's an anachronism, reading the papers. But, seeing all these headlines go across our phones and Twitter and everything else. And yet the market seems to be grinding higher. And part of it is data. And we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, and even Facebook, that's a big story today. Even though it's under pressure, catching some fire, it's still trading higher. So a lot to cover over the next few hours. Let's get you going, though, with a check on that trading day. Let's head off to Charlie Pellet for the Bloomberg Business Flash. Hey, Charlie.
Hello there. Happy Monday. Yes, still working from home after all these weeks, months. Just want to begin with a headline out of Texas. Houston area ICU beds are up again, advancing by another 2% right now. They're now 95% full, up from 93%. This according to the Texas Medical Center. But again, worth repeating that headline. Houston area ICU beds now 95% full. It is an up day on Wall Street with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. They're all pushing higher. Let's begin with the numbers. I'll give you the story behind the numbers. S&P now up 38. That is a gain of 1.3%. The Dow up 490 points, higher by 2%. NASDAQ is up 101, a gain there of 1%. The 10-year yield 0.64%. Gold is down 0.1%, $17.69 the ounce. Crude oil higher by 3%, $39.65 for a barrel of WTI. Just got to mention one Dow stock, Boeing. It is flying higher. Boeing 737 MAX actually in the air as I speak right now on a test flight flying over and around near Moses Lake in Washington State. Boeing shares again higher now by 10.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Much more to come, but let's set the Business Week agenda because it is a trade that we're trying to figure out who better to help us suss it all out than Vincent Signorella. Vincent Signorella, our global macro strategist for Bloomberg. He joins us on the phone from White Plains. All right, so Vince, you come into a Monday. It's a holiday-shortened week that we're looking at. Traders trying to figure out where they want to be come Independence Day. What's the mood starting out here?
Well, it started out overnight in a positive way where traders are looking at a month-end, quarter-end rebalancing, and that shifted to some positive equity news. And then it moved over to a virus count. And as really as is expected on a Monday, but it does lift all boats, virus counts tend to drop because the counting over a weekend, the testing over a weekend is generally less. And then I heard you mention about the Houston ICU beds. Well, it's a little bit confusing on that subject. Apparently Thursday, 4 of the major hospital CEOs had a conference call and assured everyone that the ICU bed situation is actually under control. And while the beds may be filled in the ICU, they have plenty of capacity elsewhere in the hospitals to take care and separate COVID patients. So that was the reason on last Thursday we saw that big jump in risk. And then you talked about the data, and we had a huge boost in pending home sales, albeit off a record low, but we had now a record high. So the data seems to be improving and going along, and people are just feeling a little bit better today.
Yeah. So that's interesting. And I was looking at something out on the Bloomberg, I guess Citigroup polled their institutional clients, and more than 2/3 see a 20% decline in the stock market as more likely than a gain of a similar route. So there is a fair amount of fear still out there, but there's also a fair amount of bullish tones and trends out there as well.
Yeah, no, and I think, we of course we have the ISM data coming out this week. Powell is speaking tomorrow, and then we have the job gains or job count on Thursday. And I have to dig into this report a little bit more. Maybe I'll send you something a little later. A friend of mine who's an economist is expecting an actually really big bump in job gains this Thursday. So if we see something like that follow on, and perhaps some better manufacturing data on Wednesday, which has been improving, I think this mood is going to continue into the weekend. And if it does so, there'll be a lot of people chasing it into, as you say, a shortened weekend, a long holiday weekend.
What do you worry the most about happening over the course of the week? Because you mentioned the Houston ICU beds, Vince. I mean, what does it take to really sort of pull a trader out of his or her kind of reverie here?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, the situation just seems to be up and down, up and down. There really hasn't been either good news or bad news enough that has dictated a tone where we see, even a week of gains or a week of losses. I think we would need to see a sustained increase in virus counts. And it's very disturbing when somebody from the governor of Florida says the biggest increases are 18 to 44. Because young people, I can tell you, I just noticed this in my own town on Sunday, filling up at the gas station. Young kids, no masks, buying hard lemonade, going to the beach in a big group. And, you can see right there where that's a situation which is going to lead to trouble at some point.
But I do wonder, too, Vince, are people, if they're bullish in terms of their outlook, is it because of just the rally that we've seen and they're just trying to jump on, kind of the rally off the lows, of course, or is it because fundamentals are maybe slowly, but they are getting better?
No, I think the latter is really true, Carol. I think fundamentals are definitely getting better. I think there's more of a realization that the virus is going to be with us for a while, that things aren't going to be completely better until a vaccine comes along. You're going to see major shifts, I think, in the long run in terms of, obviously how people do things, but how employment trends go. So the restaurant industry is probably not coming back for quite some time. Yeah. So people who work in the restaurant industry perhaps now move towards delivery type of systems like Amazon and things like that, and maybe the job payment is pretty similar, and you don't see a big loss. You will see major losses for the entrepreneurs, the restaurant owners, but not necessarily the bulk of the people who work there. And then you mentioned Facebook earlier, making a bit of a comeback today with the ad situation. An interesting note with Facebook is most of their ads are direct ads. Direct placement ads and not really paid ads. So things like that are starting to come back into the market and saying, we keep worrying about things that really aren't necessarily something to worry about, perhaps. And so I think the market, at least at this point, is looking for good news, not bad news.
Certainly feels that way. All right, Vincent Signorella, thank you so much, global macro strategist for Bloomberg. He's, of course, a contributor to the Macro Squawk Desk. That's a real-time curated news service, audio streamed directly through your terminal. Check that out at Squawk.co on your launchpad.
Lots coming up. Yeah, there is a lot coming up. Exactly. We're going to have the CEO of Dow Chemical. Our Caroline Hyde has an interview with him, so we will hear from that interview the outlook, the virus, all of that. And then we've got several of our most read stories on the Bloomberg. And Jason, they're both race-related. One is about the unwritten code on when it comes to race on Wall Street, and then we've got another about the truth about flood risk. We're looking at those areas geographically around the nation that are most vulnerable to floods that can worsen inequality as well.
Absolutely. Two really good stories. We're also going to talk more about Facebook. You heard Vince mention that. And also two of our favorite voices coming up this hour, talking about Joe Nocera. I actually caught up with him earlier for my Business of Sports pod. He's in fine form, I can tell you. And Josh Green, arguably the best known and most watched political reporter on the scene. He literally wrote the book on the 2016 campaign. So can't wait to hear what he has to say about what's going on in this race.
It's about the president and Joe Biden, how they're swapping roles. So looking forward to that. Meanwhile, let's get to the Bloomberg Business Week Bite of the Day, one number that tells us a lot. It is 65. More than a quarter of all American adults have reached traditional retirement age. The 2019 Census Bureau report putting this out. The number of residents 65 and older jumped 34% to 54 million last year from the 2010 report. And this, of course, outpacing both the rate of growth in the working age population as well as that of children, possibly adding to the burden on governments. We have been talking about this for a while.
Because that's what the government needs. More burdens.
More stress.
Exactly. All right. More to come. First, Mark Mills. He's got your world and national headlines. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Jason and Carol. Thank you. A Boeing 737 MAX lifted off from a Seattle airfield with a U.S. Federal Aviation Administration pilot on board. The first of several flights to test whether the revamped jetliner is safe following two deadly crashes. The so-called certification flight is a milestone toward ending a grounding imposed worldwide in March 2019 after the accidents killed 346 people. The maker of remdesivir, a drug shown to shorten recovery time for severely ill COVID-19 patients, says it will charge $2,340 for a typical treatment course for people covered by government health programs and about $800 more than that for patients with private insurance. Gilead Sciences, which announced the price Monday, came under attack by critics who say taxpayers funded much of the drug's development and that remdesivir has not been shown to improve rates of survival. New York's Democratic Governor Andrew Cuomo is blaming rapid reopening plans in other parts of the country for surges in coronavirus that he says threaten the entire economy.
They have been advocating from day one, reopen the economy, and now we see the results. It just plain hasn't worked, and it has been a failure. Will Rogers, when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging.
A divided U.S. Supreme Court struck down a Louisiana law that required abortion clinic doctors to get privileges at a local hospital in a surprise reinforcement for women's reproductive rights. Chief Justice John Roberts provided the crucial vote, joining the court's liberal justices in the 5-4 majority.
Working from home, take a little more time for breakfast. Tom Keene.
How will this pandemic change your NASDAQ?
Jonathan Farrow.
When you look at that sector, some of these companies won't exist, will they?
And Lisa Abramowitz.
They've only continued to increase the delinquencies and defaults.
Crunch data topped with fresh world news. Bloomberg Surveillance. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. And now, watch us on Bloomberg Television.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
The best of Bloomberg Business Week every bit.
You know that feeling?
Coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
How do we control coronavirus now? Listen to Claudia. She's a care worker.
I got the call from NHS Test and Trace. Told I'd been in contact with someone with coronavirus. Couldn't believe it. I had to isolate at home for 14 days. Couldn't go to work, couldn't go to the shops, couldn't get out to exercise. I didn't even feel ill. But you know what? To protect my family, my friends, my community, well, you just do it, don't you?
Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
The big Volkswagen event is now on. If you're after a new Volkswagen, we offer to pay your first 3 months finance payments and an additional £500 to £1,000 contribution to your deposit at 3.8% APR representative. Hello, sir. Do any take your fancy?
Well, yes, a new Golf or T-Cross. A Tiguan. No, Passat. Oh, I need to sit down.
Here, have a seat.
The big Volkswagen event. With every type of car on offer, you may have trouble choosing. With Solutions Personal Contract Plan until 12th of July, excludes e-Golf at participating retailers only. Minimum 46 months to receive 3 months finance payments. Indemnities may be required. Volkswagen Finance. Contact your local retailer to book an appointment.
Whether you're dreaming of a house the size of a football stadium or a football stadium in the back garden of your house, what you need is dream come true money. Luckily, Friday's Euro Million Super Jackpot is a massive £110 million. Now that's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
First, we're told that masks don't work. Then, we're told to wear them all the time. One week, we hear that the mortality rate is 2%. The next, well, who knows? In the time of COVID-19, there is so much uncertainty, and so much scientists are learning in real time, along with the rest of the world. So it's hard to know what you can be sure of and what's still a big question mark. Enter Podcast 19 from 538, where we'll explore the evidence behind the science in our fight against coronavirus. I'm science journalist Anna Rothschild. Each week, I'll investigate coronavirus mysteries, keep track of the latest developments on vaccines and treatments. Oh, and I'll try to edit out all the times I shush my family since I'm recording this thing from the chaos of my home.
Search Podcast 19 to listen today.
Want to get all your college sports news in one place? Turn on the Yahoo Sports College podcast to hear experts Dan Wetzel, Pat Forty, and Pete Thamel break down the latest NCAA stories from the football field to the basketball court and beyond.
I think Reggie should do a video of him running to Heritage Hall and front flipping in. Remember that famous front flipping the end zone that he did? Wasn't he the one who made that popular?
I think he was.
I think it was, yeah.
Search Yahoo College Sports Podcast on TuneIn to listen.
You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
It's 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all climbing after better than an estimated economic data offset concern over an increase in coronavirus cases. The S&P 500 index up 37, up 1.2%. The Dow's up 491 points, up by 2%. And NASDAQ is up 93. That is a gain of 1%. 10-year down 1/32 with a yield of 0.64%. Gold is down 0.1%, 17.69 the ounce, while West Texas Intermediate crude now surging 3.5%, $39.85 a barrel. AMC Theaters has delayed its U.S. reopening until July 30th, and Twitch, which is Amazon's live streaming site, has temporarily banned President Trump's account for violating its rules. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly and Carol Massar here with you on a Monday afternoon. Yep, Lemon, it's Monday.
Oh, my God. I feel it. It feels it. Interesting. I kind of had to go out and about for a medical thing or dental thing. That experience was good. I went to a show, I went to a store or so, and, they're being very, very careful, but I can see how you can quickly tip into oh my God, I'm out.
Yeah, totally. Well, and reopening, that is the word of the day for sure. And how it's going and the effect on the virus is important. Joe Knows Sarah is with us. I am very lucky because it's the second time today I've gotten to talk to him. How lucky am I? He joins us on the phone from Florida. Mr. Knows Sarah, you are seeing this up close and personal in terms of one state's reaction. And as you often are, you've got a little bit of a different take. What are you seeing?
Well, here in Boca Raton, let's face it, it's filled with New Yorkers. Everybody's wearing a mask. I was at Williams-Sonoma yesterday, and I asked somebody what would happen if some person came in without a mask, and they told me that corporate had told them that they need to ask that person to leave and that they would try and help them from behind a closed door. So it's not like the people that I see, many of whom are elderly, by the way, this is Florida, South Florida, are all wearing masks, they're all doing the right thing, so on and so forth. But there's no question this is a huge spike in Florida. I think the governor is correct in ascribing a fair amount of that to young people who are, crowding into the bars without masks, without social distancing, and spreading the virus. And the startling number is that the average age of a person with a positive case has dropped from 62 to 34. So that pretty much tells you what's going on here. And the governor has responded by closing the bars. And when he does his daily thing, like Cuomo used to do, he's always talking about masks and social distancing and washing your hands and the importance of all of that. But he hasn't mandated masks, which is something that, for instance, the mayor of Miami has done. And Miami's also closed down the beaches for July 4th, for the July 4th holiday weekend. So, here's the thing, Jason. Take a look at California. California numbers are going up just as fast as Florida numbers are, and just as fast as Texas numbers are. The virus does not care whether you're a progressive governor or a Trump-loving governor. It really doesn't. And it appears to me more and more that just the act of reopening spreads the virus, no matter how much you try to prevent that from happening. If we lived in a society where 100% of the people wore masks and 100% of the people practice social distancing all the time, maybe we'd be in better shape. But we don't live in that kind of society, and so this is kind of the price we're paying.
Well, so, Joe, here's the deal. I think so many of us are like finger wagging at Florida saying, see what you're doing, see what you've created. I mean, how should we look at what's happening either in Florida or some of the other states where we're seeing numbers go up? I mean, are they doing something wrong, or not necessarily, because maybe hospitalizations aren't going up as much, or and those that are more vulnerable are actually quarantining, while those that aren't so vulnerable are going out and about. And that's a more realistic way of kind of getting back to normal and reopening our economy.
Right. So here's the problem. What the epidemiologists say is that you should get your R number below 1. That means that every person who has it gives it to fewer than one person statistically. But no state is really willing to do that. Not even New York. New York's at 1.02, which is pretty good. Florida's like at 1.53. Texas is at like 1.8. California's 1.5. Because if they wait that long, they worry about businesses shutting down, about the economy getting worse and worse. So there's an anxiety to open up the society as quickly as possible to get economic activity back up and running. So I think you could make a scientific case that almost every state has reopened too early, according to the hard and fast epidemiological recommendation. But this is the consequence that we're facing now, is because people are giving it to more than one person, and the numbers are going up. The flip side is, if it truly is all younger people, there will be less deaths and less hospitalizations because younger people are more vulnerable to it. Some of them are asymptomatic, and you can survive in that kind of situation. So Florida has actually done a very good job of protecting the nursing homes, much better than New York, and they've been many fewer deaths among the elderly. That's a good. So every state has a kind of a mixed bag of things they've done well, things they've done wrong. The progressives have had a great deal of fun sort of blasting the red state governors, and the red state governors have had a great deal of fun saying, see, our numbers are lower than yours, even though, on and on and on. It's ridiculous. Everybody should be trying to figure out the best way to reopen that'll kill the fewest numbers of people.
Yeah. All right. Well, thought-provoking as always. Joe Nocera joining us on the phone, Bloomberg opinion columnist, best-selling author, host of the award-winning podcast, The Shrink Next Door, which has a new bonus episode dropping next week, I believe. So check that out. It's also going to be an Apple TV movie starring Paul Rudd and Will Ferrell. Can't wait for all of that.
Can I be like a guest at the party, like at one of the parties? Can we just be in the background?
And by the way,
please?
If that's not enough, Carol Masser, Joe Nocera just signed a deal with Bethany McLean to write a book about the COVID crisis. So look for that. So much going on. I have promised, and there's I take this unwillingly, to be Joe's hype man for all things. He's the best.
I just love having him on and talking to him because he's
check
just
him
incredible.
out. A special edition of Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast. He's talking about football and all that good stuff.
All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week on this Monday. Carol Masser, Jason Kelly, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The week is off to a strong start for Wall Street. Stocks are sharply higher after data showing a surge in home buying last month overshadowed coronavirus concerns. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 472, the S&P is up 34, the Nasdaq up 84. Cirque du Soleil has filed for bankruptcy, the latest corporate victim of COVID-19. It shut down its 44 productions worldwide and laid off nearly 4,700 employees in March as the pandemic took hold. A Boeing 737 MAX is airborne over central Washington state in the first of several test flights. With an FAA pilot on board, the revamped plane is being put through its paces to see if it's safe to return to service. The nation's richest liberal arts school, Williams College, is cutting prices by 15% for next academic year. Tuition, room, and board will be $63,200. It cites extraordinary circumstances for the year ahead. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
If knowledge is power, the Bloomberg Terminal is your power up, connecting you to real-time financial data, market-moving news, powerful analytics, and an influential network of financial decision makers around the world. Share ideas, negotiate trades, and gain the insight you need to make more informed decisions. See how the Terminal can take your workflow to the next level at Bloomberg.com/professional.
How long? How much? How many?
What if the world listened more? Maybe it could become a better place. Because when we really listen, we start to notice things that don't sound quite right. They might not seem obvious at first, but listen closely and they stand out like a sore plum. And the more we listen, the more we learn. Our ears help us find better solutions. And things can change from this to something a little more like this. The new Honda Jazz is a hybrid. Honda, the power of dreams.
How do we control coronavirus now? Listen to Claudia. She's a care worker.
I got the call from NHS Test and Trace. Told I'd been in contact with someone with coronavirus. Couldn't believe it. I had to isolate at home for 14 days. Couldn't go to work, couldn't go to the shops, couldn't get out to exercise. I didn't even feel ill. But you know what? To protect my family, my friends, my community, well, you just do it, don't you?
Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
Whether you're dreaming of a house the size of a football stadium or a football stadium in the back garden of your house, what you need is dream come true money. Luckily, Friday's Euro Million Super Jackpot is a massive £110 million. Now that's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
There's lots to discover when you join Tesco Mobile, like the incredible iPhone SE with its Retina HD display. Perfect for streaming on the go for just $19.99 a month. That's our lowest ever price. But hurry, offer ends 12th of July. Visit us in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 12th of the 7th 20 was £22.49. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements with Tesco Mobile required. Subject to status, 99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
In
case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Ready for some straight talk on what's happening in the MLB? On the Barstool Sports Podcast starting 9, Dallas Braden and Jared Carrabis cut through the BS to break down the league the way they really see it.
Yeah, we're continuing our little mini-series of college baseball coaches in addition to bringing you major league players from throughout the league. If you've been listening to Starting 9 for some time now, you know that we've had a big leaguer on every single episode for probably 2 years now.
Search Starting 9 on TuneIn to listen.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 1061 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar along with Jason Kelly. Coming up, we're going to hear from a big-name CEO. We're talking about the head of Dow, the big chemical company. So our Caroline Hyde caught up with him, so we'll get into that conversation, Jason, in just a moment.
We will indeed. First, let's hear from Charlie Pellet, though, an update on the trade. Hey, Charlie.
Well, hello there, Jason Kelly. Happy Monday again to you both. We've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all advancing. From Washington, word that the Federal Reserve has announced that the primary market corporate credit facility opened for business today. That is the last of its 9 pandemic emergency lending programs to become operational. Stocks advanced after better-than-expected economic data offset concern over an increase in coronavirus cases. The dollar advanced, Treasuries little changed. Here's where we stand right now. The 10-year, the yield there, 0.64%, I should say, on the 10-year. We've got the S&P up 33, up 1.1%. The Dow up 474, up 1.9%, while NASDAQ is up 84, higher by 0.9%. Again, the 10-year yield, 0.64%. Gold down 0.1%, $17.69 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude rallying 3.2%, $39.70 for a barrel of West Texas Intermediate crude. A surge in Boeing is lifting the Dow Jones Industrial Average after aviation regulators approved a critical set of test flights for the 737 MAX. Boeing shares up today by about 10%. Wall Street's continuing to monitor new coronavirus clusters around the world that could indicate the pandemic is far from over. In the U.S., Texas is fast becoming the new center of the pandemic. They're now reporting 97% of Houston ICU beds are filled. Dr. Joshua Sharfstein is Vice Dean at the Bloomberg Johns Hopkins School of Public Health.
The states just plowed forward, and there was sort of a moment where governors just felt like, this was the right thing to do. The virus was just sitting there ready to do its thing, and that's what the virus has done. You get people into bars, and the virus is going to spread quite a bit.
The Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Gilead Sciences shares are jumping after saying it will charge the U.S. government and other developed countries $390 per vial for its coronavirus-fighting drug, remdesivir. It's roughly $2,300 for a 5-day treatment. Gilead shares right now just turning negative, down less than 0.1%. Researchers say an Abbott combination of antiviral drugs normally used to treat HIV did not benefit patients hospitalized for the treatment of COVID-19. Abbott shares up now by 0.1%. Recapping, S&P up 32, up 1.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right. Appreciate the update, Charlie Pellet. So one of the things, Jason, we really care about is talking to heads of institutions, CEOs at companies to give us an idea of kind of where do we go from here. And Bloomberg TV anchor Caroline Hyde, she caught up with the chairman and CEO of the chemical giant Dow. We're talking about Jim Fitterling for another edition of CEO Spotlight. And as I said, what everybody wants to know is what the rest of the year in 2021 look like. That's where Caroline began.
How has your business fared? How are you looking at now a world that is hopefully recovering, but still so many tensions and concerns about whether we are indeed starting to navigate our way to a healthier future?
We try to keep our sense of humor here. We sent around the kind of the Back to the Future picture
where the professor tells Michael J. Fox, whatever you do, don't set it on 2020. But it's been an interesting year. Demand, as we thought going into second quarter, because of all the lockdowns that were happening around the world, demand in April and May was pretty slow. And we took some actions to slow down some of our operating rates just because we're trying to manage cash and liquidity, and we didn't want to end up building a lot of inventory during this time. We didn't have very good visibility to what the recovery was going to be like. We're starting to see things started to open up in late May. We're seeing more things open up in June. And I would say if you looked at things like going into the pandemic where there were a lot of panic buying, consumer goods, packaging, health and hygiene materials, items that you would use for sanitization, those were all very strong. But then the big economy like any capital spending, any construction, any automotive part of the economy was very, appliances, furniture was very, very slow. And what we've seen is some of the panic buying has come off through the quarter, but the demands are still good for packaging and home care and health and cleaning and hygiene. And we're starting to see automotive pick back up. So we saw in the month of May, we saw good sales increases. Automotive sales in May were quite a bit below the prior year. In June, they've jumped up quite a bit. A lot of that's coming out of inventory. The automotive startups are coming, but we really need the production ramp up before we see the chemicals demand come with it. Oil took a big dip down at the beginning of the quarter, mainly because of the supply-demand imbalance. And then the moves in OPEC and the shutdown of the number of wells here on the shale fields in the U.S. have started to tighten that up. So we've seen oil kind of move off of the $20 numbers back up into the $40 a barrel range. And our outlook is I would say more bullish now than bearish on oil, but it's going to take a while for the big demand to kick in to bring oil back.
And that is Dow CEO Jim Fitterling speaking with our colleague Carolyn Hyde for her CEO Spotlight series. Interesting to hear from him. And even that last comment about, more bullish than bearish on oil, man, that's a different tune than what we heard from just about everyone 3-4 months ago, as that was one of the catalysts really for that just economic and market drama that we saw, to say the least.
I love how he kicked it off, though, the Michael J. Fox Back to the Future. Whatever you do, don't set it for 2020. I mean, I do think about, you mentioned Joe Nocera writing a book with Bethany McLean, on the virus. I think it's really interesting, this time in history. And I do wonder how we'll look back at it, because in some ways, if we do get to a recovery pretty quickly or more quickly in 2021, like it's almost going to be a blink of the eye in terms of kind of our longer term history. And yet, it is just such a big, we literally have shut down our economy.
Yeah, well, and what we do know about that new book that Joe and Bethany are going to work on is it's about the economic backdrop coming into the virus and how that informed the response, which I think we can all agree has not been great in the United States. And then looking forward, the implications, the economic implications of the virus to come. So I can't wait for that. These are big questions, and you're right. Regardless of whether it's a short moment in time, the ramifications are massive.
No, exactly. And that's what is so striking about it. And I think that's why when we look at, the market sell-off and the contractions and then the bounce backs, everything is big moves in a very short time frame, which is not historically how it all happens. No. And that's what makes it so staggering. And, it's certainly going to be one for the history books, but it's just, and we're not done. We're not even close to being done.
Yeah, it's not even July.
It's not even July, Lemon.
All right, let's get some world and national headlines now. Mark Mills has those. Hey, Mark.
Jason, thanks. A bipartisan group of congressional leaders is demanding the Trump administration explain what it knew about reports U.S. intelligence concluded that Russia offered bounties to Taliban fighters to kill U.S. troops. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany said President Trump was not briefed on reports because there was no consensus among intelligence officials about the accuracy of the information.
There is no consensus within the intelligence community on these allegations, and in effect, there are dissenting opinions from some in the intelligence community with regards to the veracity of what's being reported.
Jacksonville, Florida Mayor Lenny Curry is making indoor mask wearing in public places mandatory as of 5 p.m. today. The state's Governor Ron DeSantis was asked about that edict and said he supports Curry.
We've worked very closely with Jacksonville, just as we've worked with the folks in South Florida and others, and we're going to continue to do that and support efforts that they think are appropriate in their given jurisdictions.
A House hearing today into the police operation against mostly peaceful protesters across from the White House June 1st. Police clearing out Lafayette Park so President Trump could walk to nearby St. John's Church. Australian TV news reporter Amelia Brace telling the Natural Resources Committee that she and her cameraman were caught in the melee.
Loud flashbangs boomed around us and some sort of chemical irritant and plumes of smoke filled the air. I can be heard screaming as I was struck by non-lethal projectiles directly to my legs and backside.
President Trump's re-election campaign has filed a lawsuit against Pennsylvania officials to block voting by mail. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's BABBEL.com.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career?
Listen, that's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
Whether you're dreaming of a house the size of a football stadium or a football stadium in the back garden of your house, what you need is dream come true money. Luckily, Friday's Euro Million Super Jackpot is a massive £110 million. Now that's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Hi, I'm an ad for Voxy, the mobile network with endless social media that doesn't eat your data. And I'm here to tell you that summer is on after all. Start that side hustle you've been talking about forever. Or throw a festival in your back garden and live stream it to the world. What are you waiting for? Stay connected, stay endless with Voxy, the mobile network with endless social media. Get 6 gig of data for £10 a month. No contract, cancel anytime. Voice and video calls excluded from endless social apps. Some general data required. 30-day rolling plan, 25 gigabyte roaming. Fair use and terms apply.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Are you fully informed on the NBA? On the NBA Hangtime podcast, veteran sports writers Sekou Smith and John Schumann analyze the latest NBA news, storylines, and discussions with guests from around the basketball universe.
Isaiah Thomas joined us here on the Hangtime podcast. Isaiah, good morning.
Everybody's doing well. As you know, my daughter tested positive.
Search NBA Hangtime on TuneIn to listen.
Ready for a one-of-a-kind look at the NFL? On the PFF NFL podcast, Steve Palazzolo and Sam Munson interpret the unique stats of Pro Football Focus to analyze the league, uncover secret superstars, and discuss which teams to watch out for in the next Super Bowl.
Let's talk some football. Let's do it, Steve. All sorts of stuff. We're going to do most improved defenses around the NFL. Solomon Wilcots, our very own. He went into some detail over at PFF.com. Most improved defenses around the
Search
NFL.
PFF NFL on TuneIn to listen.
We're all guilty of spending too much time on social media. Why not add something genuinely useful to your feed with TuneIn? Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to learn about some of the best stuff happening around the app. You might just discover your next audio obsession. How do hockey fans know what day it is? Just turn on the Locked on NHL podcast, where a rotating cast of hockey experts guide you through the week with a different theme show for every day. From big news Monday to recap Friday.
But we've got a couple of news items that are noteworthy in the NHL in the last week, one of which is below the NHL, and we'll bring that up first. So the AHL announced officially, this has been speculated for weeks and weeks, but the AHL...
Search Locked on NHL on TuneIn to listen.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Ford says it's halting all U.S. social media ads for 30 days. Also says it's reevaluating its presence on social media, and it adds hate speech on social media must be eradicated. Repeating an earlier headline from the Bloomberg, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says the state is hitting the pause button on indoor dining. Stocks are higher across the board. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ are all advancing right now. Stocks climbed after better-than-estimated economic data offset concern over an increase in coronavirus cases. The S&P 500 index is up now by 29 points, up by 1%. Dow Jones Industrial Average up 455. That is a gain of 1.8%. NASDAQ up 67. That is a gain of 0.7%. 10-year yield 0.63%. Gold is down 95 cents the ounce at $17.70. Little change there. West Texas Intermediate crude now up 3.3%, $39.74 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly and Carol Masser here with you. And this is one of these, I'm just rubbing my hands. So excited to get some time with these guys. Josh Green is just one of the guys you want to hear from at a time like this, especially as this election really heats up. He's got a great story in the magazine. In Roll Swap, Trump runs as an outsider, Biden plays incumbent. Josh joins us on the phone, as does Joel Weber. He is, of course, the editor of Bloomberg Business Week. So, Joel, I think you feel the same way I do. You just want to know what Josh Green has to say about all this, right?
We do, but I also want to just say that, we got this story in, and then the art department came up with some art that was just phenomenal. And we were also like, do we need the words anymore? So, as great as Joshua is, the art department can sometimes be even better. But, the conceit really started with Josh, which was, obviously the presidential race being what it is, and the times being what they are. It's almost like the president as an incumbent and Biden have almost switched places, it seems, where Biden's actually running like the incumbent might, whereas Trump has maintained this sort of outsider persona almost, despite actually being in charge of the federal government. So, Josh, as you sort of dug into this, one of the things that really stood out to me was the number of authoritative people you've talked to who have advised other presidential campaigns in the past. And I'm really curious, what were the things that stood out to you as you were reporting this?
Well, overall what stood out was just the oddity of this race. But the specific thing that seemed so odd, as we talked about, is that these two guys have sort of just swapped roles. So in speaking to past presidential strategists, administration officials, Trump officials, it really has to do with the unique nature of these two men. I mean, on the one hand, Donald Trump, loves being a Kennedy, loves holding stadium rallies and tweeting and criticizing people, but he's never really kind of cottoned to running the government. And when you look at all that's going wrong in the country, from the spread of COVID to the recession and the collapse of the stock market and all these other things, it's kind of understandable why he might not want to focus on that and run the way a traditional president would, which is having lots of rose garden ceremonies and reminding people that he's the president and he's in charge. On the other hand, we've never had a candidate quite like Joe Biden, somebody who's been on the national stage for so long and is so familiar that he doesn't really need to introduce himself to voters the way that like a new candidate like Barack Obama did in 2008. Biden doesn't really have to convince people, hey, I'm qualified to be president, because he's been vice president for 8 years. He's been a senator for 140 years or something like that. And so he has very well-known name recognition. People have a very clear idea of who Joe Biden is, moderate Uncle Joe, whatever. And so he can kind of camp out in his basement, and as long as he's leading in the polls by 10, 12, 14 points, he can essentially run an incumbent's campaign and just say, hey, vote for me, I'm Joe. Time to put me in charge.
Well, and a big difference is, as you write in your story, is about, incumbents, going after undecided voters in the middle, right? And that's what's missing from Trump.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, look, there's a reason that incumbent presidents of both parties, going back 100 years, tend to do the same thing. You roll out a big second-term agenda. You bring in government, business bigwigs into the Oval Office. You kind of flaunt the power that you have in the bully pulpit and sort of establish the conditions by which voters think, that guy looks like he's in charge of things. Let's give him 4 more years. That's worked for every president, except for George H.W. Bush and Jimmy Carter in my lifetime. And, because incumbency has a real measurable advantage. So it's sort of interesting that Trump has chosen to forego those potential advantages. I mean, he can, call a nationally televised address. He can reach out. He can start a jobs program. There are things that you do in a big recession that Trump is just not doing. And by failing to do those, I think that helps explain why it is that swing voters in the middle, at least right now, according to the polls we have, are primarily siding with Joe Biden.
So, Josh, I mentioned the artwork, and for those who haven't seen it, and because this is obviously a radio program, the art department superimposed a Biden face on Trump and a Trump face on Biden to get this point across. And I'm wondering if that's still haunting you, Josh?
It is haunting my dreams and my nightmares. I tweeted out the image on my Twitter feed a little while ago. If anybody wants to check it out, and I'm pretty sure it's at Business Week, online and in print. But it is weird. The face swapping is a very vivid visual representation of the broader idea I was trying to get at here, and one that you will not be able to shake from your mind, for better or for worse.
And so, Josh, the unusual nature of this campaign, we got to talk about that as well. That sort of Biden in the basement in many ways, and Trump not being able to do these rallies. How much of that atmosphere or lack of atmosphere is contributing to sort of the topsy-turvy nature of this?
I think it's contributing a huge amount because, the problem for Trump is that right now the election is a referendum on Donald Trump, and things aren't going real well, not in the public health sense, not in an economic sense. And so he needs to sort of switch tack and make this a choice election between Trump and Biden. Which one do you like? Which one do you trust? Which one is better suited to run the economy? That's what Trump's campaign is trying to do. But it's difficult, as you said, because Trump, held one sort of aborted fitful stadium rally. Doesn't look like there's going to be any more anytime soon. He can't use the traditional methods that he did in 2016. And he just doesn't seem inclined, as I point out in this piece, to behave in the way a normal president would and use the Oval Office, use the White House bully pulpit, use the Rose Garden to try and make those distinctions. And because Biden is so far ahead in the polls, he doesn't really have any pressure on him to get out there and get in front of voters and risk making a gaffe, making a mistake, saying something offensive that could weaken his support. And so here we are on what feels like a glide path toward a Biden victory, at least barring change. But, of course, as we know, everything changes every 3 weeks. So,
exactly. And I would never, this is a president and a candidate formerly who did things his own way and fooled all of us in terms of finding his way to the White House. So time will tell whether or not this will ultimately hurt him. In the meantime, it's an incredible read. Great reporting, Josh, as always. And I got to say, the picture connected with the story that's in the magazine, it's online. Yeah, it's a little jarring. It makes me a little uncomfortable.
You look at it and you go,
Please stop.
Yeah.
Of course, Josh Green, national correspondent at Bloomberg Business Week, on the phone from Washington. And our thanks to Joel Weber, Bloomberg Business Week editor, on the phone in Massachusetts. But, man, a reminder, this is a big year for Americans in the United States. It's a presidential election year.
It is. Don't you forget it. For those of you listening in New York, D.C., San Francisco, watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week continues right here. If you're listening on Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, Bay State Business, that is coming up next. Stick with us. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
At the start of every day, you can't predict exactly.
Whether you're dreaming of a house the size of a football stadium or a football stadium in the back garden of your house, what you need is dream come true money. Luckily, Friday's Euro Million Super Jackpot is a massive £110 million. Now that's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. You can do your bit by continuing to work from home if you can and avoiding public transport. If you have to use public transport, you must now wear a face covering at all times, avoid peak hours and wash your hands before and after travel. For everyone's safety, we regularly clean our services with antiviral disinfectant and will be providing hand sanitizer across our network. For more information, search TfL's Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Newlywed to newborn. Ordering out to tucking in. Dream car to driveway. Isn't it nice when things arrive quicker than expected? Enter your location into our digital new car locator and it instantly tells you if the BMW you want is available nearby. So it'll be with you quicker than you might think. Search BMW New Car Locator today.
Stay close to college hoops conversation with the College Basketball Talk podcast from NBC Sports. Join Rob Doster and Bobby Reagan for weekly recaps of what's happening in every conference, nostalgic flashbacks to classic games, and big picture discussions on the future of the sport.
Yes, they found a way to ensure that there was a financial incentive for be able to get paid for a kid to go there, if that makes sense. But it's not, there was still a recruitment involved, right? Let me think about it like this.
Search College Basketball Talk on TuneIn to listen.
This is Mike Golick Jr. from ESPN's Golick and Wingo. Every morning, Wingo Dad and I sit down and discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golick and Wingo to start listening today.
Who says you can't have a laugh while getting serious about America's pastime?
On the daily podcast Locked On MLB, comedian and baseball fanatic Paul Francis Sullivan talks about each team, each pennant race, and everything else in the game, from rule changes and controversies to baseball cards and stadium food.
For those of you who are not familiar with me or the old show, I love to obsess over baseball. I'm talking baseball over the Super Bowl. We had a TV showing the division series during my wedding.
Search Locked On MLB on TuneIn to listen today.
Come on the Bloomberg Business app and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ are all higher as we move into the final hour of trading on this Monday, June 29th. Stocks are rallying on record home sales. That is offsetting concern over an increase in coronavirus cases. S&P 500 index up 30 points. That is a gain right now of 1%. The Dow is up 462 points, up 1.9%. And NASDAQ is up 63 points at 98.20, a gain of 0.6%. 10 years up 132nd with a yield of 0.63%. Gold, little change now, up 8 cents the ounce at $17.71. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 3.1% at $39.67 a barrel. So it is an update on Wall Street. As for the economic backdrop and the shape of the recovery, Tiffany Wilding is chief U.S. economist at PIMCO.
We clearly saw growth in the payroll figures as well as retail sales and things like that in May. So we probably came out of recession in May. And I think what's going to happen is these next couple of months are going to look very much like a V-shaped recovery as we get this spurt of activity, as people, start to get back to work and start to reopen the economy.
Dow member Boeing is soaring as U.S. aviation regulators approved a critical set of test flights for the 737 MAX. That MAX flying today. Boeing shares now up by 12%. Beyond Meat shares dropping by the most in more than a month after being downgraded to underweight from overweight by Barclays, which cited valuation and, quote, near to medium-term headwinds, most notably related to food service channels being closed because of the lockdowns. Beyond Meat shares trading lower now by 8.5%. After the bell, among the companies reporting earnings, Micron Technology, Cineplex, and Herman Miller. Again, recapping equities higher across the board with the S&P 500 index climbing 31 points, up by 1%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average now up by 465 points. That is a gain of 1.9%. NASDAQ up 61, a gain of 0.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, let's do a little Business Week economics now. It was a big day where it felt like some of the data were driving the trade, continue to drive the trade here, Carol. So let's check in with Yelena Shalecheva, senior U.S. economist for Bloomberg Economics. She's on the phone from Long Island. So, Yelena, help us understand what we're seeing from a data perspective, because the market seems to be pretty appreciative.
So what is happening is a rebound in activity following a lockdown. And this is kind of the data we saw last week, we are seeing this week, and we will continue to see in the weeks ahead. So the thing is that, the economy is reopening, so people are rushing to the stores. I saw like a big line around the department store here in the area. So everybody is tired and they want to go shopping. They want to go and buy houses. And this is what we saw in today's data on pending home sales. So that is
this is a huge number, 44%. The jump in pending home.
Following 2 months of significant declines.
Right.
So you have to average it out. That's one thing. And the other thing is that every single housing market indicator will look absolutely amazing right now, because usually what happens in June, the seasonal activity starts leveling off. So the seasonal factors are almost like exacerbating the extent of a recovery right now. And obviously the recovery is happening, and also you get an unusual spike because of the seasonal factors. So because usually, these things happen early in the spring. Now they're happening in June.
Can I just ask you something? A little perspective. Pending home sales is a bigger part of the market than new home. Is that correct?
Pending home sales is the same exact thing as new home sales, but just for existing properties. So they account for contract signings.
Right.
So what will happen going forward is that this spike in pending home sales will translate into an increase of a similar magnitude in existing home sales a month or two later. So this is when folks shop for houses that were pre-owned. New home sales instead show contract signings for newly built houses.
And so we are looking ahead toward the end of the week where we will get both. Will we get both jobless claims and monthly jobs data, Yelena?
Yes, and I think it will be a good report because payrolls will be in kind of a sweet spot right now. So companies still have payroll protection program funds so that they can keep their employees on the payrolls. At the same time, we did not see the spike in new COVID-19 cases until the second half of the month. So that will not be a factor in the payrolls report because usually we measure how many jobs were created around the middle of the month. So it should be a good report.
Right.
What happens next is key.
So we have some other data points. We get consumer confidence this week. I always think that's a good thing to, get a feel on. But I do wonder, with increased concerns about reopenings, I mean, how volatile is this number? And even if there is a spike, we can see it dip down again.
Absolutely. So one data point I would say is very much worth looking at this week is the number of vehicle sales. So that's a very timely indicator and covers kind of the whole month. So we will know how much of a rebound in June we saw in terms of discretionary purchases, something that really drives economic growth. So and going forward, following the expiration of augmented jobless benefits and fiscal support going into August and September, those payrolls reports will be very important. And those figures in terms of personal spending will be so much more important than what we see right now.
We know your team will certainly be watching. Yelena, thank you so much. Yelena Shaletyeva, senior U.S. economist at Bloomberg Economics, on the phone from Long Island. I don't know about you, Jason, but when we have gone out on the roads, we are seeing new cars everywhere. And people have talked about that. That's where they feel safe, and they're maybe doing road trips. And so people are seemingly, at least it looks like it, buying cars. I keep seeing just new cars with, obviously the temporary plates. Yeah. And so I'm looking forward to seeing that number.
Well, and anecdotally, I also am seeing this notion of, okay, well, if I'm going to be commuting to New York City maybe 2 days a week instead of 5, what's the math like when it comes to taking the train? What's the math like, especially if I'm not necessarily saying this is me, but other people, going in at different hours, and does it make more sense to park and just sort of driving around? Because you're right, that feels like a safe space. It's something you can control.
Can I tell you, in my world, what it costs me for a week of commuting on mass transportation is what it would cost for 1 day of driving between toll, garage.
Really?
So 1 day of driving in is pretty much what it costs me for the week.
For the week? Yeah. See, mine is a very different calculus.
Oh, right, because you're on, it's more expensive.
Because I'm on a commuter train and it's more expensive.
Yeah.
So it's a very different calculus. And so I think if you're living in the suburbs, it becomes very different. Now, traffic obviously is a big issue.
So would it cost you more? It would cost you more to drive, though, right?
It would cost me maybe slightly more if I was going in 5 days a week. But that's the issue, is that you're going to have a lot of people. So if not, then the math gets a lot closer.
Maybe we can talk to the powers that be and see if they can buy a garage in New York. Make our lives a little easier.
There you go. Yeah.
Just kidding. It's not going in the suggestion box.
Are you, though?
I'm never kidding.
A lot more coming up. We've got some interesting conversations ahead. And a lot of it's about reopening. But, let's not forget, we're also in the midst of some big existential, structural conversations around race in America, race on Wall Street. Michelle Davis has the most read story on the Bloomberg today by a huge amount. It's all about the unwritten rules of race on Wall Street. It is a must-read. I'm really looking forward to talking to her about that.
Yeah, I am as well. And, of course, we're going to talk a little bit with Andy Brown about the pandemic and what it has done for the environment and how that relates back to China. So we'll get to that in just a moment. Let's get back to World and National News headlines. Let's turn things over to Mark Mills. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Carol. Thank you. Governor Phil Murphy said he would pause New Jersey's plans to restart indoor dining on July 2nd, citing concerns about such a sedentary activity, especially among outlier bars and restaurants that have not been following social distancing. This brings me no joy to do this, said Murphy, but we have no choice. New Jersey indoor dining with capacity caps and other restrictions had been scheduled to restart July 2nd, 4 days before New York City was to do so. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo said skyrocketing cases in the South and West are prompting him to consider postponing indoor dining in New York.
New York City is currently in Phase 2. Phase 3 would begin on Monday. But there are issues that we have to think through. One is there's a lack of compliance with social distancing in New York City.
The maker of remdesivir, a drug shown to shorten recovery time for the severely ill COVID-19 patients, says it will charge $2,340 for a typical treatment course for people covered by government health programs. Gilead Sciences, which announced the price Monday, came under attack by critics who say taxpayers funded much of the drug's development. Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar says the government plans to make a major purchase of remdesivir.
President Trump has secured 500,000 courses of treatment of remdesivir, and this through September. This is the drug that, if you're hospitalized, can reduce the length of your stay by a third.
Ford Motor says it's reevaluating its presence on social media and will not purchase any ads on any platform for the next 30 days. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills.
Even when you're just beginning to leave your house, you see a bigger world.
The company is a clear winner from the virus lockdowns.
He's saying a new cycle has started.
And it may never be the same.
Does all of this boost in work mean that you're going to expand?
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
What could there be that could change this?
Weekdays at 1 a.m. Eastern.
What was the most striking thing about your research?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/Our Stories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
With COVID-19, so much is unknown.
Is this the worst you've seen?
But we are committed to getting you every piece of information we can as soon as we can.
Tell us about this first big win you have. What is it, 24 million N95 masks?
Fewer unknowns.
Who's winning here? Where is the pressure right now?
That's our goal.
What worries you the most? The time it's going to take for a vaccine?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
This July 4th, tune in.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like discovering that the box of chocolates has a whole other layer underneath? Or scoring extra poppadoms with your takeaway? Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage? Yeah, that moment. Feels good, right? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are
ploughing on, boxing up goods and rolling them out, shipping kettles,
instruments to kids,
art for walls,
treats to pets, shorts for sunny weekends,
to brighten up one British home at a time.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
Should your kids go back to school? Ask Andrea. She's a teacher.
We're doing everything we can to keep the children safe and happy at school, which is why it's great that more of those who can are coming back, not only for their education, but for their overall well-being too. It gives them a routine, helps develop their social skills, and they get to see their friends too.
If your child is eligible, they should return to school. The government is working towards getting all pupils back in September. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
The big Volkswagen event is now on. If you're after a new Volkswagen, we offer to pay your first 3 months finance payments and an additional £500 to £1,000 contribution to your deposit at 3.8% APR representative. Hello, sir. Do any take your fancy?
Well, yes, a new Golf or T-Cross. A Tiguan. No, Passat. Oh, I need to sit down.
Here, have a seat.
The big Volkswagen event. With every type of car on offer, you may have trouble choosing. With Solutions Personal Contract Plan until 12th of July, excludes e-Golf at participating retailers only. Minimum 46 months to receive 3 months finance payments. Indemnities may be required. Volkswagen Finance. Contact your local retailer to book an appointment.
Whether you're dreaming of a house the size of a football stadium or a football stadium in the back garden of your house, what you need is dream come true money. Luckily, Friday's Euro Million Super Jackpot is a massive £110 million. Now that's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Who says you can't have a laugh while getting serious about America's pastime? On the daily podcast Locked On MLB, comedian and baseball fanatic Paul Francis Sullivan talks about each team, each pennant race, and everything else in the game, from rule changes and controversies to baseball cards and stadium food.
For those of you who are not familiar with me or the old show, I love to obsess over baseball. I'm talking baseball over the Super Bowl. We had a TV showing the division series during my wedding.
Search Locked On MLB on TuneIn to listen today.
Trey Wingo here from ESPN's Golic and Wingo. Every morning, Mike Golic Jr., and I sit down to discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golic and Wingo to start listening today.
To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Outdoor gatherings, wash your hands and don't touch your face. Stay at least 6 feet from people you don't live with. Wear a mask. Don't share food, toys, or other items, and avoid shared surfaces. Participate in events like these infrequently. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
At Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. A Monday surge for the U.S. stock market. Let's head right over to the first word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here he is, Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. That's right. U.S. stocks trading higher, helped by record pending home sales. Dow's currently up 420 points. S&P's gained 26. NASDAQ climbs by 51. The U.S. 10-year yield at 0.63%. Gold is little changed. WTI crude futures gained 2.8%. And transports are up 161 points. Leaders to the upside in the Dow, Boeing, Raytheon, and Verizon, while only Cisco and J.P. Morgan fell. In other news, the FAA started Boeing 737 MAX test flights, and Clorox, Conagra, and Microsoft are the latest companies to stop Facebook advertising spending. Wrapping things up, Micron reports after the bell. Live from the first breaking news desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie?
Okay, we thank you very much, Bill. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk, SQUAWK on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly, Carol Masser. We love talking to Andy Brown. Yes. He is the editorial director of Bloomberg.